All right, I would like to call this meeting to order at 17:30 on August 10th, 2021. Council would like to acknowledge the Ucluelethat on whose traditional territories the District of Ucluelet operates. This proceeding is being broadcast on Zoom and YouTube, which may store data on foreign servers. By participating in this proceeding, you are consenting to be recorded. The recording will be available on the District of Ucluelet's YouTube page for future access. Have all committee members received the late agenda?
Yes.
May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Moved by Councillor McEwen, seconded by
I'll move it.
Councillor Cole.
All in favor?
Yes, well, I'm like, we don't have any amendments. Oh, no, we've got the late agenda. Sorry. Long day. May I have a motion to approve the agenda with the late amendment?
So moved. I'll second that.
Sorry, I'm like messing up. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. We have convened this special committee of the whole to consider the proposed Lot 16 Marine Drive housing development and rezoning bylaw number 1284/2021 in detail. We will first receive a brief introduction from the Director of Community Planning about the proposed development, associated bylaws, and covenants. Next, there will be an opportunity for the committee to receive input and questions from members of the public. Public input will be received from in-person speakers through Zoom webinar, by telephone, and via email to communityinput@ucluelet.ca. Public input will not be received through the Zoom chat or Q&A functions. I will call for in-person speakers first, Zoom telephone participants second, online Zoom participants third, and ask staff to read any unpublished correspondence fourth. All other correspondence has already been provided to Council. I will call for public input in this order 3 times throughout the meeting. Questions raised by the public may be referred to by the chair to staff or to the applicant. Those of you who are attending in person, please remain seated. When you wish to speak, raise your hand and approach the podium when a staff member calls on you. After the third call for public input, the committee will discuss the proposal. When discussion concludes, the committee will consider formulating a recommendation to Council regarding the proposal. This recommendation will be considered at an upcoming Council meeting. The Manager of Corporate Services will now provide details about how to provide public input.
Background information about the proposal is available on ucluelet.ca. Public input will be received during the public input portion of the agenda. As the chair has said, if you're attending in person, please remain seated until staff call on you to approach the podium. You must speak into the mic to ensure those listening online can hear you. If you're not called on immediately, you can lower your hand until the chair asks if there are any other members, then you can put up your hand and someone will call on you. To call in, dial 1-778-907-2071. When prompted by Zoom, enter the webinar ID 87269550346, then hit the number sign, excuse me. No participation ID is required. Please press *9 to speak during the public input section of the agenda. When it's your turn, staff will unmute your mic and Zoom will indicate that you have been unmuted. You may need to unmute your mic as well by pressing *6. To participate using Zoom online, enter the URL https://us.web.zom.us/j/6955036 into your browser and follow the prompts. Please update your Zoom name to your first and last name. Click the Raise Your Hand icon to speak during the public input section of this public hearing. When it's your turn, staff will call on you, unmute your mic, and Zoom will indicate that you have been unmuted. You may need to unmute your mic as well on your end. Please note, input is not being received to the Zoom chat function. If you do have some input you'd like to send in writing, please send it to by email to communityinput@ucluelet.ca. I will read your input. So as I said, to participate by email, send your input to communityinput@ucluelet.ca before the conclusion of the public input section of this meeting. Whether you're participating by phone, Zoom, or email, start by stating your full name and address. If you're speaking or writing on behalf of an organization or another person, please identify the name and address of that organization or person. Now I'm going to turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you. I now invite the Director of Community Planning to provide a brief introduction.
I just want to make sure, it sounds like my mic is working. If I could have the slides on the screen, and you could advance it to the slide number 2, which has the aerial photo, would be fine. I have a couple of just sort of brief sort of housekeeping comments. I'll maybe just share to start with and just explain a little bit what we're doing here today. So this is not a public hearing. I think there's sometimes some confusion about what's the difference between a public hearing and a committee of the whole meeting and a council meeting and the rest of it. So committee of the whole meeting is a little less formal than a council meeting, and it's a lot less formal than a public hearing. And so this is a couple reasons for that. It's also not an open house or a town hall meeting. It's a little more structured, so comments go through the chair of the committee, which is your council members. The reasons for it being a bit structured is, one, COVID. We want to keep everyone safe. I think people have figured out that if you are a household unit, you can pull your chairs together. But otherwise, we want to keep everyone at a safe distance. And then also, everyone hears the same thing, and that's important. In more sort of the town hall or open house meetings, it can be hard for everyone to hear the same questions, the same answers. And really, this is all leading to, this is a great democratic exercise in giving community input to your elected representatives who are leading to a decision point. So this is about asking the questions and having a community discussion and informing council in their decisions ultimately on this rezoning proposal that's been presented. So the last bit I would just mention, a little housekeeping, is like a public hearing, we do have some things if people want for reference. We have a copy of the zoning bylaw, the active, which is the 2011 official community plan bylaw, the draft official community plan bylaw. If anyone wants those resources, raise your hand and we can make sure you have them for reference today. Now, I'll give a brief overview of the proposal and the proposed zoning, and then we'll have it. Obviously, there'll be a chance for discussion and questions, and we can try and answer those as best we can. And we understand that the applicant, as a representative who will be on the Zoom call as well, so the chair may direct some questions to the applicant as well as to staff. On the screen at the moment is an aerial photo of the area. I think most community members have figured out where Lot 16 is by now. And this is a good place to start, really just to point out in terms of the context of the site. It is a large site. We'll see if the pointer works here. Everyone can see that. It's this, and this is a relatively recent air photo. The site was cleared and has grown in, but it's this large green site. We're right here in the community center right now. So it's a very walkable site in the center of town, close to the schools. Those are the schools in the upper part of the screen there. Big beach in the community center. And so, next slide, please. The current zoning of Lot 16 is this comprehensive CD2A.1.6 comprehensive development zone, which probably doesn't mean a lot to people, but it was part of a rezoning of the whole Big Beach area that was done from approximately 2003. And next slide, please. What this application is, it's a rezoning application to change that designation, to look at the uses of the land and the densities, and they have applied to seek approval for a number of things, and I'll just walk through briefly. So here we are in the community center. On this end, this is Matterson Drive and Marine Drive, and to the east would be Victoria Road. The site would have a rental apartment building on the corner of Marine and Matterson. It would have townhouses on the southern end as well, multifamily development. There would be also a couple forms of single family, basically a strip that's along Marine Drive, and then a new internal road with some smaller lot housing. And I'll next just describe the zoning that has been crafted and is the subject of this committee of the whole meeting and has previously gone to public hearing. Next slide, please. In response to the housing development they've proposed, the zoning bylaw 1284 was put together, and it would rezone the site into basically it's 3 different zones and really 4 different areas that correspond with those proposed land uses. Next slide, please. The first would change this area to what is one of our current zones in our zoning bylaw, the R1 single-family residential. So that's the same zoning that the properties along Victoria Road or further to the east along Marine Drive and Helen Road and Pine Road and many of the older existing neighborhoods in town have that single-family residential zone. And I think it's worth pointing out, so this would be 6 single-family lots that would be in that strip backing onto Marine Drive. That zoning, the R1 zone, that is the one part of this development where the R1 would allow for, as a secondary use, a bed and breakfast or short-term rental use within those homes. Next slide, please. So we have an existing R3, which is a high-density residential zone. That allows for a mix of things, townhouses and apartments potentially. And so the zoning bylaw would designate 2 areas of the lot. Next slide, please. To the R3 with some specifics for those areas. One is the apartment lot, which we'll refer to as apartment lot A. That is where the 48-unit rental apartment building is being proposed. And I'll just note that the proposal includes entering into a housing agreement to ensure that that can only be used for rental, that it cannot be stratified or sold as condominiums, if you will, that it would be a rental apartment building. I believe there have been some questions around what would the rents be. It would be up to the market. It would be up to the developer. It is not an affordable rent-restricted proposal, but it is rental housing that's being proposed. Next slide, please. The other piece of the R3 is that would apply to the townhouses. So these, again, are using existing zoning designations within our zoning bylaw that fit with some site-specific modifications. So this townhouse would be a maximum of 28 townhouse units. They're within that, again, that R3 zoning. Next slide, please. And in the sort of central portion of the lot, what's being proposed is single-family residential uses. The proposal was really for these to be some more compact lots. And so we've created a new zone, the R6. And so that allows for sort of a mix of sizes within that, but in comparison, the maximum lot size in the R6 zone would be the equivalent to the minimum lot size in the R1 zone. So it is a more compact zoning designation. You'd expect it to be subdivided into smaller lots. What's being proposed is 30 lots total within this area. The zoning also, I should point out, has a minimum lot size, a maximum lot size, and a maximum average lot size, so that there would be a variety, that they won't all just be the largest of the lots, so that there is a variety of price points, presumably. And as well, the uses there are single-family residential, and on larger lots within that, the largest of the lots, I should say, the accessory uses would be a secondary suite or cottage. Those would be accessory dwelling units, not short-term rentals. So there are no short-term rentals that are proposed within that block of the single-family lots. I think I captured all of that. Next slide, please. And this slide I wanted to note because there was a number of comments in the public hearing about access and circulation. The diagram on the left is highlighting what the proof of concept plans that have been proposed by the applicant, where they have shown a layout, and their proposal was to have essentially 2 closed loops of roads, one coming into the center of the single family, which would come off of Marine Drive, and that they were proposing initially to access the townhouses off of this entry on Victoria Road. And that's one of 4 essentially unopened or unimproved road right-of-ways that come off of Victoria Road, which were really a byproduct of when Victoria Road was created and that subdivision was approved. Those spurs of roads were registered at the time of subdivision in anticipation of the neighborhood expanding one day. There were concerns about the proximity between that entrance to the townhouses, and that's really right at the intersection. It's just one lot in at the intersection with Marine Drive. The proposal, so that was what was submitted, and you'll see the plans, the layout reflects that from what the developer has proposed. The recommendation that's gone forward from staff, and this was a combination of engineering and emergency services and planning, really recommend that this be an extension of a grid of streets to some extent, so that there would be not concentrating the traffic on either side, but rather having the option of access from Marine Drive that would flow through, and from Victoria Roads, there'd be access both ways. I think, next slide, please. I think there's one more slide, sort of the overview. So I should just back up and say, after the public hearing that was held on June 8th on the proposal for Lot 16 and on the bylaw, Council basically posed a series of 19 questions in a report that were referred to staff and the applicant. And so the applicant has provided a written response to each of those, and that's, I believe, on page 14 of the agenda of this committee of the whole meeting. Also, there's a section in there on that staff put together answering some of the questions around costs of upgrading infrastructure. That's on page 9 of the agenda, and that's from the July 13th report to Council. I don't think at this point it would benefit anyone for me to read through all of those questions and answers, but those questions may come up, and we're prepared to share some of the some materials to hopefully explain them. This diagram was presented by the applicant as well as part of their answers, and so it really talks about process and what questions are answered at which part of the process. And and so this zoning amendment application is one part of, or one step that they would go through if they get to ultimately constructing housing on Lot 16. So we are here up at this part where we're still in the zoning application process. Council has held a public hearing, has referred it to a committee of the whole to have more community discussion and input. As a result of this, we would expect there'll be some further discussion at council table and maybe some changes, or maybe taking it to another public hearing. Another public hearing will be part of the process, as it's required prior to council adopting a zoning bylaw. And obviously new information has been met, so you need to hold another hearing. So this, again, was provided by the developer, but it's their take on sort of describing what are the steps. If it gets to a rezoning decision that gives them the zoning, then they still have the steps of development permits as well as subdivision. And so that would go through a series of more detailed studies and detailed information that leads to council approval, and the subdivision is approved by the approving officer. And then whether it's a single family lot, say we could go straight to building permits after the subdivision is serviced and the roads are built and all of that. The apartment parcel and the townhome parcel, those being multifamily, would need further development permits issued by council once they have detailed plans available for those. So that would be a little lengthier process to get the development permit authorized by council before they start construction. Simple. I think perhaps unless council has, or the committee has questions on any of those materials, perhaps it's best that I sort of leave it and see what the discussion brings up.
Thank you, Mr. Gregg. Does the committee have any questions for planning department?
Not initially.
No, I don't have any questions, but I do have, Mr. Gregg, can you just reflect on what the existing zoning allows for right now, if they were to go with the existing zoning? Can you explain a little bit what that CD is?
Certainly. If I could ask to, where are we here? If we could maybe skip to slide number 17. So this comprehensive development zoning, and this sort of came in this was buried in a staff report back in March, where we described it, that the comprehensive development zoning that's there could allow up to 76 resort condos. So this is a bit of an aerial, looking at it from a western side, I guess. So if this is Matterson on one side and Marine Drive sort of wraps around, Victoria Road would be at the back off of this side. So what I'll highlight right here is right now is the ridge, and there have been some of these single-family lots that have been developed on Marine, and there's a couple under construction. So lot 16 is what's in the background. And you can kind of see from this fuzzy diagram that there was further kind of blocks in this concept drawing, anticipating more of, you know, the kind of condominium development, similar to what was constructed on the ridge. So there is a density bonusing provision, but it's a little unclear. That one of the part of the framework that was sort of listed in the staff report for that 76 resort condos hinged on there being a new swimming pool and fitness facility, which would be privately owned and maintained but open to the public. And there was no covenant that was registered on lot 16 to define how that would work or to require that that be provided. And so that may or may not be part of why lot 16 hasn't developed prior to this. And regardless, this is an application to step away from that old zoning and has a new zoning application proposing the housing that they're showing now in the apartment and the townhouses rather than the resort condominiums and the short-term rentals, with a different approach to the amenities that are being offered.
Thank you. Any other committee members have questions? All right. Are there any in-person people who would like to speak? Please raise your hands.
I believe there's a gentleman in the back. So you're just going to have to speak into the mic.
Sorry, we do need the microphone for the Zoom and online.
My name is Michael Gromboy. I'm the owner of 1328 Victoria Road. I am a year-round resident, and I am a father and family man. I'm just hoping to get a little bit of clarity on some of the confusion that I've come across while perusing these lengthy documents. In the March 23rd report to council, it was indicated that of the R6 infill single-family homes, that all but 2 of the potential lots were going to be, could have the secondary housing unit on it. Whereas the developer in the last PowerPoint presentation that was presented in June indicated that only 2 lots would potentially have these second houses on, which would obviously skew the number of potential homes and potential beds, potential people, potential cars that will be coming and going from this property. As the unfortunate sap who lives directly across from the proposed road that will both have the R6 and townhouse traffic that will go right to my front door, I am very concerned about the number of cars and people who will be potentially residing on lot 16. I think this is too dense, too much, too tall. At 35 feet in almost any other jurisdiction, this seems like a 3-story house. So as the primary dwelling on the R6, if a 35-foot house is to be approved, why not everyone else? And the secondary unit is supposed to be 24 foot. So again, this seems very tall, very dense. And my concern is that we are potentially looking at a 20 to 25% increase in Ukula's population, and we have no indication of how the resources, if we have the resources and infrastructure to support this. I've read an awful lot of information that I feel is very pertinent to this conversation, and I'd like to have some of these questions addressed. And I wish I'd prepared better for this, but I appreciate the time. Thank you. So yeah, the clarity on the number of potential secondaries in R6 would be appreciated.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. Sorry, I didn't catch your last name. Mr. Gregg, are we aware of the number that would, of the R6 lots that would have ARDUs? Or is that up for debate depending on how it's developed? Do we know?
Through the chair, the answer is going to be a little bit of, it depends. Because what has been shown is a concept plan, and so based on the concept plan that they'd shown, and perhaps I'll ask if we could flip to slide, I think it's the last slide, slide number 25, if possible, which is the zoning the way it was drafted. There it is. It depends how they lay out the final subdivision is what it comes down to, and that the comment more recently was after they had done further survey work and they thought that they probably would not have that many lots that would be large enough to have accessory dwelling units. So if, and I don't know if people can read it here, the lot regulations in that zone have a minimum lot size. They also have a maximum average lot size and a maximum lot size. But within the uses, these additional secondary permitted uses are only permitted on lots of the 480 square meters area or greater. And that's the secondary suite or the accessory residential dwelling unit, which is the cottage. So depending on how they configure it, the way this zoning works is that they need to have at least some lots that are simply a small house on a small lot with no accessory unit. But exactly how many they get depends on how the lots are laid out and just in getting the roads in and whatnot. Some corner lots are going to need to stretch and be a little larger, and so others would have to balance that out. That would result in a mix of lots. They wouldn't all be the same, wouldn't all have suites. At least some are going to need to be, in order to meet the maximum average, simply small houses on small lots with no suites.
Thank you. I'm not sure if that answers the question to Michael's requirements.
Not quite.
There are 30 single-family lots. Given the maximum average and that only lots larger than that, it would be, I think, extremely unlikely that if they could even get half of them to have a suite or a cottage, because they simply wouldn't meet their maximum average. And the indication, we're looking at the survey and the layout of the roads, they were going to get fewer than that. There may only be a small handful that have a suite or cottage. But again, the way the zoning works, that they can then go and come up with the detailed plan for subdivision approval. And at this point, there's no restriction on a maximum number of those lots that could have suites. It would really be a matter of how is that designed at the end of the day? Is a lot created, and if you purchase that lot, is it large enough to allow you to have a suite or not? There is some flexibility there, partly until they engineer and lay out the roads.
So we would probably not be able to answer that question completely until more like subdivision stage, or?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Anybody else who would like to speak?
Arvid Johnson, 1477 Victoria Road. On your proposal, like you're saying, it doesn't seem that you guys have a clear handle on any of it, what's going to happen in the future. It's just what this developer wants to do, and you're going to give him a permit to do whatever he wants with it. Because you're not sure how many people are going to be developed into that little lot. You don't know for sure what's happening with the accesses. There's 4 accesses you mentioned that go right through my back door. Where is our lead strip of Greenbelt? I haven't heard anything about where that's going to stay in place. Could you answer any of that?
I do believe that the information on the Greenbelt is actually in the proposal, there is a green space along Victoria Road. The 10-meter green space has been, yeah, between Victoria Road and the development.
Yeah, but he also
That's-
mentioned that there are old proposal of cul-de-sacs where it's open. Does that mean that they can open those up for access in the future without any consultation?
I'm actually not sure about that. Do you have a response to that, Mr. Gregg? That I'm not sure.
Certainly. Through the chair, could I have slide, I'm just trying to think how best to illustrate this, to answer the questions. Let's go back to slide number 4, please. I think, so this was the plan that was shown, or now let's go to slide 11, please. That might give us something to point this out. Oh, yeah, this shows it a little better. In terms of the green belt, the proposal includes a park dedication, and I'm remiss for not pointing out the park dedication. 2 pieces. One would be a sort of a block of parkland between the ridge and to the north. There would be a park here, but also a 10-meter strip of park that would be dedicated along the back of the Victoria Road properties. I should have mentioned that. So the private, lots in the apartment lot would stop, and then there would be municipal parkland. So that land would not be owned by the people who bought into this development. That land would become the property and the ownership of the community, of the district. These are existing unopened or unimproved road right-of-ways that were put there. So that is public land, a little strip in that location, about mid-block on Victoria Road, 1/3 of the way down and one close to Marine Drive. Those are district-owned road right-of-way today. So those, like this one is showing a pathway in this drawing through there. There's no plan to open that up. For one thing, that road would then run into a strip of parkland, not road on that side. So if this pattern of development were ultimately, I'll point at this one, if this were built, there's really no plans or would be no reason because to open further roads on these other areas because it would hit parkland that then backs into the apartment building, and in this case, it would back into somebody's backyard. So the road circulation would be internal to the development. We're recommending that it uses this road access. It would be the best for sort of the flow here for emergency access and for engineering reasons, because it would be far enough away from this intersection to not have the conflicts from what the developer proposed.
Thank you. I'm going to ask a question at this point. So there's parkland dedication along the backside of Victoria Road. There is a 10-meter buffer along the backside of Marine Drive. Can you explain the difference between a buffer and park?
Okay, I can try.
Without drawing, because you're missing your drawing chart.
And it might be, okay, I'll use this slide and one other. So yes, there are different approaches to this. The applicant is proposing to take a strip of land 10 meters wide along the whole length, and essentially that gets removed from the private land and given to the district as parkland, as part of this subdivision. Same with this park here, and that's how park land is created, and the Big Beach Park was created that way. There's also some covenanted green space, which would be registered on the backs of the lots along Marine Drive. So these 6 single-family residential lots, they would be accessed from the internal road and have a covenant which ensures that the strip along Marine Drive stays treed and green. No driveways coming off of Marine Drive. They'd all have internal access so that as we drive along Marine Drive, it would look very similar to what it is today. That would stay. Similar along the apartment. So that's still private land, but the covenant essentially, that is registered on the title of the property, and it would say essentially that those owners cannot cut down those trees. It's a contract naming the district, assuring that that green space stays in place. An example some people may be familiar with is the Rainforest Drive development. When those lots were created, there are covenants on there to keep the trees between the houses so they're not all cleared right to the lot lines. It keeps green space and trees and the habitat in place. So that's different. That is registered on those lots to keep green space, as opposed to what's along the back of Victoria Road. That would be a strip of land that would become public land. So that's parkland. So it's not in private ownership. And so both the Victoria Road lots that would back onto it, or these new lots on the internal road, would have a back fence, back property line onto what is a 10-meter green belt park strip, if you will. The townhouse side, what's being proposed is a covenant with a 10-meter setback as well. So it's a building setback that's being proposed to keep the buildings, and that's beyond what the zoning would require to have a greater setback on that side.
So correct me if I'm wrong, a 10-meter setback means that you could technically clear to that 10-meter mark,
Yes.
as opposed to a green space where you
The setback,
need to leave trees.
if you think of the setback as a typical lot that has a front yard and a rear yard, those setbacks, you can't build within that area, but that could be your garden, your trampoline, your lawn, your garden, if you will. The covenant, if there's a covenant on the back of that, it may still be your property and your building setback is different, but the covenant starts to spell out what you can and can't do in there. It's basically an agreement to say, no, we're not going to have lawn there, we will keep trees. And that whereas parkland is, again, like people are familiar with, it is park that is owned and managed by the district. So a decision to remove trees or vegetation would be the district's decision, not the private property owner who is a neighbor to it at that point.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Councillor Cole?
Sorry, Mr. Gregg, I just want something really elementary here, because we talked about things we don't know or things we do know or things that are a concept or whatever, but what we do know is the total number of lots, I'm going back one topic, total number of lots on that inset, the R6?
What?
So that number stays the same.
The zoning has a maximum lot size and a minimum lot size.
Yeah.
Right, so what they have shown there is the max, that it would fit. What they've shown, the R6 zoning would allow that many of those 30 lots and no more. They couldn't squeeze in a 31st lot.
Even if they made some of them smaller, they can't add additional lots.
They run out of room.
So to say if you had 5, say 10 lots are all the same, but if you decide to make each of these a little bit smaller on one hand, you can make each of these a little bit bigger on the other hand to then therefore accommodate for that secondary dwelling.
And there's a maximum average which limits how many they can make larger. That's the part that's maybe a little confusing. But it also, so it means that they can't get by having a maximum lot size, but the maximum average lot size means that they can't say, oh, well, let's all build them the biggest and have fewer lots and sell them at a higher price and have them all with cottages and suites. It means there has to be a mix. So if they do 1 or 2 of the largest lots, they may need to do more of the smaller lots, which can't have suites.
But at the end, there's still the same total number of lots.
There's the same total area, and they may get less than the 30 that they show, depending on how they balance it. But what
But
they're
they can't
showing,
get more.
they run out of land, yes.
Right. Sorry?
I'm not sure who the,
Yeah,
Next
there's
person.
this lady right in the front here, closest to the mic, in the black
I
shirt.
thought, Matt, I believe you're next.
Lindsay Black, 1049 Helen Road, designated commercial real estate appraiser. I'm just wondering what the developer, if any, is contributing in terms of like CACs or whatnot. I mean, there was the discussion about the pool, which obviously doesn't appear to be slated anymore. is the developer offering anything in return for this development?
I do believe, Mr. Gregg, you could perhaps mention the amenities that are,
Yes, give me a moment here to flip the list of it, because I don't want to rattle it off the top of my head. So there are a number of conditions, but also the amenity contributions, and I will just rattle them off the top of my head. Aside from the rental apartment building, which we had presented is arguably an amenity in itself, the fact that it's rental housing and not condos, there's $1,000 per unit as a cash amenity contribution. So they're showing a total of 112 dwelling units. That'd be $112,000 cash contribution for the district to use for whatever public purpose. It's really up to council. There is a lot that they have proposed will be transferred to the district. Out of the 30 lots in the interior, one will be given over to the municipality for use as council again sees fit, whether it's to sell that and use it for other purposes or to use it for affordable housing or whatever. That'd be a future decision, but that has been offered. The parkland dedication exceeds what is the minimum or maximum 5% that can simply be acquired as part of a subdivision. So there is additional land being given between the buffer and the park that's being given is more than double what is sort of the typical, and that's part of the rezoning.
When you say given, do you mean they're just not building up to the highest density that's allowable?
Through the chair, that's land being dedicated, and as part of the subdivision plan, it must be transferred. The ownership becomes the municipalities. That's parkland.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, the apartment building is a large portion of the density, and I'm wondering how and if they'd be sharing the maintenance fees with the other residents. So if it's strictly rental, and then obviously that rental is going to be using the same roads, the same lights, how are you sharing that cost, or are they, or is it through property taxes?
I believe, Mr. Gregg, that there is a slide that shows you the road going into the apartment complex, which I believe is separate from the others.
There's no
Yeah.
egress.
Unless emergency services requires one, but I believe they've been involved in the discussions about the road plans. But, Mr. Gregg?
Through the chair, it's not a strata that's being proposed. It is a fee simple subdivision of lots. So the maintenance of the road would become a public road, like Victoria Road or Marine Drive. They need to build the infrastructure to our standards as part of the subdivision. But so there wouldn't need to be a like sort of servicing sharing agreement between the apartments and the single family. Essentially, they'd be neighboring lots within the neighborhood. The apartment would be under one ownership. It can't be stratified or sold as condominiums. It really is going to be, one owner who'd be responsible for maintaining their parking lot and their land, obviously, and the apartment itself. But the maintenance of things like roads or streetlights would be like other municipal infrastructure. It would be through property taxes.
Right, okay. And is the developer managing the apartment building, or will they be outsourcing that, do you know?
Or selling it?
I believe that we are unaware at this point on that one.
Through the chair, that's a question that we can't answer, and or assume what the future of that would be. That I believe that may be something that the applicant, if they wish to address at some point in this meeting, might want to address it.
Just confirm, last question. Is there a covenant on the title for the apartment building so that if it were to transfer over to somebody else, it can't become stratified or something along the lines of?
It will always be a rental
will
apartment.
okay.
Yeah, that is a big part of that property.
Super. Thanks very much.
Hi, Matt Harbridge, 1816 Peninsula Road. Okay. Our OCP, it's quality of life for Ucluelet. It has to improve through our OCP. How does this development improve our town's quality of life? Apartment building, sure. Really dense population in one area with a small beach, not really improving quality of life for everybody that lives here. Economic prosperity, sure, while it's being built, there'll be lots of jobs and construction, but what are people gonna do? We have 28 lots, Weyerhaeuser's putting through, we have 33 affordable housing going in, Nick Killens is building another 20 on St. Jake's. What are possibly around 700 people gonna do in this town? What are the jobs gonna be? Are they gonna be minimum wage, or are we gonna be some tech giant town? You know what I mean? We have to think about all these things. Today for lunch, you have to line up for an hour and a half for a coffee. Where is all this commercial space gonna be to feed these people? The co-op expands every 10 years for a population that grows maybe 100 every 10 years, if we're lucky. Environmental sustainability is really this development looking at it, and this isn't all of our OCP, gonna be environmentally sustainable within our town. When you look at water, where's our water plan? We can't drill another well at Lost Shoe. It's critical fish habitat. Everybody's like, we're gonna go to Kennedy Lake for water. Do we have an agreement with the First Nations? Do we have an agreement with Parks Canada to do all that? Do we have the $10 to $15 million in the bank to do that before this is approved? We can't just go ahead and say, yeah, it's a future plan and we're gonna get it. We need the money and all these agreements put in place before we can approve something like this. Right now in Campbell River, there's a housing development they literally can't service. There's brand new homes with nothing. You can't even live in them. The engineering report from CORE that the developer has put in. So I'm guessing there's around 127 units for this land. They're saying that's all their numbers for water use, for infrastructure, everything is for 302 people. When was the last time you saw 2.4 people living in a house in Ucluelet? It just doesn't happen. Everybody's pushed to the gills in these places usually. What is the max population our town can actually service at this time without doing any of this? Like, if we can't go get water anywhere, ACRD landfill is getting full, what can we actually service in this town? These numbers are never actually said, this is exactly what we have. We can service 2,000 people, fine. This is how many people we can service. But that is not anywhere. I hugely think mental health of the town is super important. Right now, I mean, it's summer. Everybody's packed, like I said, it's over an hour to get a coffee or a sandwich in this town. People are losing their minds. It's not healthy to grow a town by 500 to 700 people in less than 10 years. It's just not. And the 700 number I'm saying comes from all the other developments that have already been approved, and then we want to roughly put in, I say 500, engineers say 300, let's call it 400 people in one corner. Is that mental health? Is that sustainable for our town? Like, does everybody want to live here when it's just bonkers? You have to line up at the co-op, line up at the coffee shop, line up everywhere. And correct me if I'm wrong, with the commercial zoning, I'm pretty sure you said they have to build a pool and a fitness center. The reason nobody's doing that is because it's not feasible. So we kind of have pulled all the cards as a town to tell this developer what we want to see on their land. They're proposing this. This is super dense. It's a lot. Like, it's literally almost a quarter of the population is going to be on this little corner. Nobody's going to want to live here that lives here now, I don't think. You can't go down to Big Beach at night and just go for a walk with your dog and bump into people you know. And that's pretty much what this town has been built on, is people you know, small town waving, saying hi. But if you don't know anybody, what's the point of living here? You just walk around and bump into people you don't know the whole time, and that's not fun for people. And that's how we've kind of marketed ourselves. We spent hundreds of thousands of dollars driving around Canada in a motorhome, putting things out, giving money to Tourism Ucluelet to promote this as a small town where friendly people live. It's kind of not getting so friendly when everybody's just pushed to the gills, So that's my little rant for tonight, as usual. But thanks for listening.
Mr. Gregg, would you like to make any comments on the water servicing particularly? Just an awareness.
Through the chair. So the water servicing, and maybe we'll call up the slide. Was there a specific question about the water servicing?
Just the issue about, do we have enough water and, yeah, no.
through the chair, maybe what I'll talk to is, could we go to slide 20, please? Which is, so Coors Engineering, they, on behalf, they're the engineers who do a lot of work for the district. This was paid for by the developer. They did the review of the servicing to see how would it plug in within our, we have a water master plan and a sewer master plan. I'm going to stop here and say, I'm not an engineer, so I'm not the final word on these things, but they're experts on it. And so they looked at, and this, was sort of looking at, okay, if you plugged this proposed development into the fabric of town, how would that affect our existing pipes and future plans for upgrades and whatnot? What would be required? So that's what the analysis, those two reports from Coors are, both looking at the sewer and the water. So there would be some upgrades that are being paid for by the developer to make this happen. So the other question of like, how much total water do we need as the town grows over time is also a question for the engineers to calculate that. And that's sort of an ongoing, okay, we've got to refresh that as if we do things like adopt a new OCP that shows a different pattern of development. Well, then we go back and go, okay, well, what does that mean? Do we need more water? Are we still in good shape? So the water master plan, has looked at, so the background to this, looked at what are all the proposed developments, what has the OCP shown, what were those master agreements that, the Weyerhaeuser and Ani lands, the things that were approved in the past. Sure. Is that better? Okay, I'll start over. No, so this analysis was looking at and identified we need to change a valve, need to upgrade some lines, put in new hydrants, that work. That's what sort of split out, and that would be on the nickel of the developer. And so there is some work to do in that immediate fabric to ensure that there's the flow and the pressure. For one thing, they have to do that as part of the subdivision. Before you build an apartment building, you have to have enough water to make sure the thing's going to be safe. But looking at the bigger picture as well, the sewer has a larger price tag where basically the analysis of the sewer, and we'll go to the next slide, which is 21, I believe. It is similar analysis. This is essentially Coors plugging it into what's areas from our sewer master plan, and those sort of dashed black lines show different catchment areas. So they've got calculation based on what's there, but what the zoning is in place that would allow, if it built out to the maximum, because there are some vacant lots in there, but they make the assumption, assume it's all built out, what's going to be the load. And they identified that Victoria Road pump station, it's going to be at 140% capacity, and that's going to be stinky and messy as it overflows, and so they need to solve that. And the solution to that was already in the master plan, which, sorry, I'm holding my collar and trying to point this out, was to replace, because right now, okay, we're here at the UCC, and just outside down the hill is a pump station, the Big Beach pump station, which right now goes and feeds to the Victoria Road pump station. The master plan called for need to put in a pressure main that really bypasses Victoria and takes what's all coming from Rainforest and Ocean West and all this and puts it up Matterson to get in basically at the corner of Peninsula and Matterson. That was sometime down the road. We need that anyways. These developers, if they go forward with this, they're putting that in. And so those works would be, again, paid for by the developer. And so that there is some thought as each of these goes forward. It's like, can we handle it or not? How do we pay for it? And essentially all of the internal development of new road, new water line, new sewer lines, those are paid for by the developer. That's part of the cost of them creating those lots that they then go to sell. But there's a piece of this that does align with infrastructure that we knew we needed to upgrade anyways. And that's why I'll go to slide 22, please. There was a question around DCC's development cost charges, which are also paid. So that's beyond the amenity contribution question. This is we have a bylaw. As development occurs, new development pays for a portion of its share of upgrading or expanding our infrastructure. So we have roads and stormwater and sanitary, sewer and water charges and parks charges, and that's per unit or per lot that's created. The total DCC is payable about $1.2 million. So that would pay for things, everything from if we need to put in another water tower or expand the sewage lagoons. This is one of the ways that we can pay for it without using taxation. So that new development should be paying its share of the upgrade. Doesn't pay for replacing the old stuff, I should say that. DCCs are never used for oh, we got an old line and it's crumbling, we need to just replace it. It's for the expansion because of new development and growth. It should pay for itself. There is an overlap, and I'll go to the next slide, please, which is 23, this one. This was in the report we took to council because this question can be confusing. We're trying to further confuse it with graphs and charts. So their on-site infrastructure, the developer, it's about $2 million to put in the roads and all the stuff on site, new street lights, sidewalks, the rest of it. Off-site infrastructure, so that sewer Matterson bypass force main piece, that's about $588,000. The new water line and check valve on Marine Drive for their water system, again, this is off-site, it's about $350,000. Their DCCs would be this 1.2 million. The dashed line would be double charging them over some of that. If they're building it themselves anyways, we can't then charge a DCC for the same work. So because of that overlap, they would pay only $800,000 in development cost charges, because this $410,000, they've already built it over here on Matterson, essentially. So currently, so again, that's part of the water master plan. Sorry, through the chair. The water master plan, the sewer master plan, they look at those. And depending on the decisions of council and in our official community plan, does that need to be adjusted over time? And it's it's valid questions. I'll ask for slide number 14, please. So there have been discussions and really testing out the feasibility of, at what point do you need to go to Kennedy Lake or have more or better water supply? And some of it has to do with storage, so water towers, reservoirs, and then some of it has to do with the source as well. This slide shows two pieces you asked about, the official community plan, or you commented on it. This is from the draft OCP. And so the map that's on the top here, this is based on, really it was work that came out of our land use demand study that we did last year, looking at what are the existing current uses. So all the colored ones correspond to, yellow's residential and kind of the red is commercial and the pinkish is the tourist accommodation and tourist commercial. And the white bits are the vacant lands. So that's the water tower lot above the school. Gray is institutional, so that's the school grounds. The water tower and the trees up above is owned by the municipality, and that's that vacant lot up there. And this is lot 16, this sort of white void in the center of town here. So that's the pattern of development that you have now. And so those infrastructure master plans, and forgive me if I'm going on kind of at length here, they reflect what's the difference between what we have today and how you anticipate, if you do have a land use plan that anticipates growth, what does that look like, and how do we make sure that we pay for it as we go, and the development pays for its share. And that, as you're aware, that the sort of lighter colors that are off more to the north through Weyerhaeuser and Ani's lands, that those are areas that had been approved with zoning in place and agreements for development. And so it's important that if there's a change, that is an opportunity to go back and relook at those master plans and make sure that, as you said, the last thing you want to be as a municipality is caught behind where, oh, we've approved something, we don't have the services for it. So that's an ongoing part of the work the municipality does. Does that satisfy the question?
Thank you, Mr. Gregg.
It's still, we're running out of water.
Mike.
Population we have. How is this development of 400 or 500 people, how does that not make us all in a worse position than what we are now?
I'm just going to jump in. You just got to speak into the mic because we got folks who are watching online as well, and we got to make sure that they're involved as well.
So a development of 500 people, 400 people, how, and we're running out of water. Currently we're on stage 1. I can't water our gardens on certain days and stuff like that. It's happened in the past. We've actually been on stage 3, I think, in the past 5 years. And in the sustainability aspect of things, the environment is getting worse and worse and worse. We all know that's not a secret anymore. How does this development how does this not change our town's usage as of right now? It has to, there's no way the math works out to add 400 people, we're better off. So that's what I'm saying is, is this developer doing to ensure that the rest of us that already live here don't run water?
Thanks, Matt. That is, my understanding is that is part of the water master plan, is looking at having enough water, regardless of the development and the, you know, growing as the town grows and where the town is planning to grow. And that is the map that Mr. Gregg showed with the pale sections that are the, you know, the plans for future spots that are zoned, like the Warehouser and the Ani lands. Like, if those are developed, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Gregg, but.
No.
Uh-oh.
Go blue, Julian.
How's that? Testing?
There we go.
Is that better? Okay. Sorry, through the chair. So that was the maps that I was showing on the slide there from the draft OCP. That hasn't been adopted yet by council. It's a somewhat different pattern from what had been shown previously. That kind of event of like, okay, here we have a long-range land use plan where we think this is what might happen over, say, the next 30 years. That's a reason to go back and revisit our infrastructure plans to sort of say, okay, different assumptions, different total numbers. At some point, that's the role of council and the community to come to what is the long-range plan of how much growth and density do we want to see, and what's the right pattern of that, respecting the environmental sensitive areas and housing needs of the community, and coming to that balancing act of here's over time, how does the community change and evolve over time? And that really is kind of the value of an OCP, is if it really reflects what the community expects and wants, and then that gives you the strongest picture to make sure, okay, our master plans, our strategy for increasing water over time is the right one, and how are we going to pay for it? And it's things like that, those development cost charges, the DCCs are one piece of it, exactly that. Oh, new development comes along, for every new lot that's created, they're paying, currently it's about $12,000 towards infrastructure. That's for increasing, it might be time to put a third water reservoir up at the top of the hill. That's a concrete example. But also, how far along does that go before storage is part of it? Do you want another water source, whether it's another well or going to Kennedy Lake? Again, that's for the engineers and sort of the details of the pros and cons and costs of those all get sort of balanced out. But it starts with, I think, the questions around what is the growth that the community accepts? How does that pattern fit? And then bring it back to, this is one piece in a proposal for a specific lot in town. How does that fit within both the current and future plans of the community? That's kind of the question for the elected representatives to wrestle with, and we try and inform it. The analysis that was done and the plans that are in the report and were shown on the screen here was about having our engineers look at, okay, if this piece were to go forward as proposed, what would the impacts be? How would we handle it? And that, yes, our system can handle that amount of housing in that location, but the developer needs to pay for a couple of big ticket items to make that happen. And so that's one of the conditions of their approval would be they're putting in that force main and they're putting in the water upgrades as well.
Thank you. Do we have any other in-person speakers?
Maybe we can have a gentleman that hasn't spoken
Yeah,
yet,
you can
or
do first. Point of order, you're supposed to do new speakers
Let's
first.
do
Yeah,
new speakers.
it is supposed to be new speakers first.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
Sorry.
Barb, mind keeping?
My name is Barbara Schramm. I live at 1958 Bay Street, and I've lived in New Clulet for over 30 years. Over that time, I've seen a tremendous amount of change, but this change before us tonight puts all of that in the shade. I'm concerned that increasing our population 25% in this small area will be an environmental and social detriment. Yes, We need more housing. It is a crisis. So I think part of this plan is good. We do need an apartment building, but we shouldn't be waiving density, road widths, parking densities. It's just too dense proposal for this one small area. My fear is that we can't support this urban density on top of our largest public beach. They're not going to build us another beach anytime soon. We must resist setting a scary precedent for future proposals that will want density increases, road width narrowing, and height exemptions because it makes money for the developer. They can just get more cash out of fitting in more lots and more people. So I don't believe we should be packing this development as tight as this proposal. Livability of our town and what we're hearing in, 90 pages of letters, and everyone in this room supports a rethink on this level of density. We're having to create a new zoning just to make these lots so small, so tight. There's a reason that zoning didn't exist before. Maybe we didn't want such small, tight lots. Questions I have that I would like an answer for is the road width shown on the proposal, which I know isn't a development permit, seems narrow. Does it allow parking in that width? It seems to me it does not.
Mr.
I'll
Greg?
ask that question.
Yeah, that's fine if you want to stay up there, Ms. Barb. Mr. Grigg, do you want to refer to the road width?
Certainly, through the chair. They have shown a right-of-way width that is narrower than, our standard is 20 meters, 16 to 20 meters are the sort of the standard road widths. In town, they're showing 14 meters. It would allow for on-street parking. The actual design of exactly where the curbs are going to go, that would come with the engineering of the subdivision. And they'd be providing that detail down the road. But even in the sort of concept stages, we've looked at it, and there will be some amount of on-street parking. How many spaces versus pedestrian walks and whatnot, we
Okay.
haven't tallied it up yet.
I'm also having problem picturing how cars can park in these micro lots. The concept sketches seem to put the cars under the buildings, which seems to be a bit of a exercise in double counting what's going to be used on the land. So I'd like to know what is the actual allowable parking in the proposal? What is the projection? I seem to read 1.6 cars for the apartment complex. I don't know if I got that wrong. But most families I know have 2 cars. So it seems to be building a parking crisis right off the bat. But my chief concern is the scary precedent we're setting, not just here, but also in Weyerhaeuser and Ani lands to come. If they see the profit that can be made by these micro lots, I fear all future proposals are going to be using micro lots. And I agree. That concerns me. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other speakers?
First-time speakers.
Hi, my name's Keegan Arsenal. I live on 437 Marine Drive. My question is a little bit less impactful on the town than some of the others, but mine's more personal to the Marine Drive area from where the new developments are happening to the end of Marine Drive for the development of the land. Because behind my property, it's a little higher, so my concern is when the land's being developed, for the drainage and irrigation, is it going to impact the closer properties like mine and some of the neighbors? If like water flow, if we get like another heavy monsoon of rain or everything, if it's gonna slough through and come through our property and hit our areas a little harder. Because some of the properties on Rainforest Lane, or is it, no, Rainforest Road, some of the properties get hit harder from heavy rainfall than other properties. So would that be addressed in the development? Is that how it's going to be dealt with?
I believe that that would come at a later stage, and it is part of the development, but Mr. Grigg, would you like to comment on water flow
Certainly what I'll
issues?
share through the chair. It's one of the questions that council had sort of put to the applicant and to staff. So on page 19 of the committee agenda, the question was water runoff onto Victoria Road and other parts of Marine Drive. And the applicant responded, their answer they provided was surface water runoff from any development or constructed works must be addressed on site and not flow onto adjacent properties. The upland property owner would be liable for any damage caused to downstream properties. Stormwater management will be undertaken for both the subdivision application and site-specific development permits to the standards set by the province and district once the zoning is in place. And they're correct. As part of the subdivision proposal, when you're creating new lots, you need to have a plan in place for how are you going to drain it. You know, assuming there's going to be a house or development on there, where do they take their perimeter drains and area drains, and how is that being handled? Whether it's to stormwater ponds or into a pipe system that connects elsewhere in the district infrastructure. So that's kind of the standard that they have to work with as they go through the subdivision stage.
Right.
Thanks.
Could it actually be used as an idea for viability, any of that water drain off from the upper properties into a water collection, say down at the bottom of Marine Drive Hill? Could a water collection area be parked there from the runoff? As an idea? To help with the water collection?
I'm not sure whether that would be something that we would see, Mr. Gregg, do you? Or is that?
Maybe. Those kinds of details will be part of the stormwater runoff, control plan that their engineers need to put forward. And that's something that our engineers, working with them, sort of giving feedback on what we'll accept into our system, if it is either going piped or into a surface system, because some of our drainage, goes into ditches that ultimately some of them end up in natural water courses, and that's one of the things that they have to deal with, is not impacting either quantity or quality, impacting what's going to be the downstream flow. So again, this is the rezoning around land use and density, and that those details are typically engineered when they get into the subdivision and development permit stages. But it's a good question.
Thank you.
Any other new speakers? Lori?
This is way too high for me. Hi, my name's Lori Bird. I live at 1547 Imperial Lane, and like Ms. Schramm, have lived here for over 30 years. I have an extreme objection to the density of lots, in reiterating what other people have said. I think that in keeping with Matt's comments and the livability of Ucluelet, why do we need to have such density? I'm totally in favor of rental housing and an apartment complex that's going to stay rental, and I'm in favor of additional housing. I'm not in favor of the density at all, particularly within that single-family condensed unit area. I have concerns about parking. That was already raised. I mean, I don't know, have anybody been downtown? Yes, there's a movie, but I live in that area down there, and you try to find a parking spot anywhere in Ucluelet except my driveway, where people frequently park. I also have concerns about the exemptions requested for the apartment building in terms of being exempted for a green space park, kids park, or whatever. And I saw in the readings that there was going to be additional monies given to Ucluelet for, it intimated for equipment for other parks and so forth. Well, I who have grandchildren in this community and take them to many of the parks in the community, most of which are you have to walk a long way in the rain or drive, have a lot of pressure on them already from the numerous lovely young families who live in the area. So you're going to build something right there, and you're going to put all that pressure on Big Beach. I don't know if any of you walk down to Big Beach in the summer when the tourists are here. I don't go there as a Euclusian or whatever you want to call people who dwell here because of the pressure. I don't want to take my kids or dog down there because there's so many people there in the summer. So you're going to sit 400 conservatively people right there with no park space. That park space that they've dedicated beyond the buffer around Marine Drive, and I don't know what the use by the municipality would be of that buffer, but the other part they talk, that's the outlook over Marine Drive, it's not very big. It's not like a hugely usable park for a number of people. The dimensions were what, 100 by 130 feet? Not very big. And I really think that if you're going to have a 48-unit apartment building that will undoubtedly have children and families in it, and then there's no dedicated park or green space for them, no child's park or anything. And so you put all that pressure for those children who then go to other areas that have a lot of pressure on them already. The other thing about the apartment is they're asking for a 4-level apartment. I saw the stepped design with the top floor. I have a question about emergency services, the fire department in particular, and their ability to respond to fires in an apartment building of that level. So they're also requesting an exemption for the height. Let me just see, I have a list here. Yeah, and just to echo what Matt brought up, you know, from a global perspective and looking at our water use, Canadians are terrible with their water use comparatively on a global scale. And climate change is happening. I don't know how much that's taken into account in your planning for your water use. I suspect not very much, because it's, I mean, all you have to do is look at what's happening in BC this year and around the world to think that our water's usage and ability to use water is not going to change. And yeah, I just think great that we're going to have some more housing. Don't like the density at all. I think it will decrease the livability in Ucluelet, and, you know, for all of us who live here, you know, what's it going to bring to us? More pressure on what is already a small rural town with limited resources.
Thanks. Mr. Gregg, would you like to comment on the 4-story request on the apartment building and the fire services, perhaps? I know that it's in there.
Certainly, through the chair. The request, and as it's been brought forward, is for the zoning to allow the height for the 4-story. There is a condition that council has indicated that there be a covenant that would limit that to essentially 3 stories unless there are plans presented for council review and approval. Essentially a detailed design of the building for council to give the green light to before they could go to the 4th story, which is different than a variance, but it's similar, I guess, in that it would be reviewed by, at least by council, as part of that process. The 4th story and the emergency services, under the building code, a 4-story building will have to be sprinklered. So that is one of the things that they trigger by going into a 4-story building. And that there was a report that went to council not long ago from the fire chief that was addressing some of those issues.
And excuse me if I missed it in the wealth of paperwork that you had available for us to read. Is there going to be underground parking at that apartment building?
I believe.
Where are those people going to park?
I believe, Mr. Gregg, that the parking is above surface because of the bedrock. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Through the chair, you're correct. What they're showing is a surface parking lot, not underground parking. The cost of underground parking is substantial, and so for a rental apartment building, they are showing a surface parking lot.
Back to what Ms. Schramm said about most people have more than one car. You got 48 units, so consider that, and you don't have a green space for kids to play in either. I'd like to point that out.
Thank you. We're going to take a 5-minute recess at the request of the committee so we will be back in 5 minutes.
Yeah, let's make a motion.
Do we need a motion?
I'll make
Yep.
the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Cole, and a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Kemps. All in favor? All right, we'll be back in 5. course, any catcalls or boos after people are speaking. It's a respectful thing, so please. Also, I believe we have the developer online who would like to say a few words. Mr. Craig? There we are.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak tonight. I've been listening intently with everyone's objections and listening to them thoroughly. We've been working on this project for about 9 years now. We're local people from Nanaimo. I'm born and raised here, and I've seen tons of change here, so I understand where people are coming from that are scared of change. One thing that does happen, that change does happen eventually, and it's how we proceed with it that matters. Going through some of the comments, I have some notes here and just want to answer some of the questions and concerns. One gentleman talking about being pushed to the gills and comment about mental health. I have mental health. I have anxiety. I know all about it. And, speaking to some of the people that live in Ucluelet and Tofino, the overwhelming issues is, am I going to have a place to stay? Do I have a rental? Can I afford a house? Which I think is a bigger pressure on mental health than adding some more doors that will alleviate those concerns. What we worked on with council or with the city to come up with a plan that will be much better than the 76 vacation rentals that's allowed to be put in there now, that alleviates a lot of those issues that Ucluelet has right now by putting in long-term rental apartment building. Obviously, vacation rentals would be a lot more profitable, but we understand that long-term rental is what's needed. So that was an amenity that we worked with the city to put in there, putting in the fact that the small lots will not have any vacation rental in there as well. Again, we understand that you guys are inundated with vacation rentals in Ucluelet. So we're working with everyone to try and make it better for that. I'm in real estate myself and understand how supply and demand works. If with these lots that come in, it'll ease the pressure so that the people that have been living there all their lives with their grandchildren and their kids who are struggling to find a place to live or struggling to buy a place, by having more inventory, this brings costs down and makes it more affordable, which we think is a positive. The one gentleman that spoke about how, you're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on tourism going across the country. Well, what happens with tourists? They come, like myself, fall in love with Ucluelet, and they move there. So it's a double-edged sword there that's happening. So on one hand, we're wanting to have tourism there to support the businesses and the coffee shops and everything else. But at the same time, we don't want to have the growth, which I think is a bit of a double-edged sword there. I think that a lot of people's concerns right now with parking in businesses is the fact it's summer. We just got let over cages. It's busy in Ucluelet, Tofino, Nanaimo's seeing it as well, Courtenay, Comox. I think that that's putting a lot more pressure on people and causing more concern for things that will alleviate. I know that when I'm there in the spring and the fall, when it's not busy, there is no issues with parking. There is no issues with coffee shops and restaurants. If anything, they'd love to see more people there supporting their businesses so that they can afford to stay open. With our development here, we went through how we can help, and again, those rental units, the free lot that we're giving the city, which will allow to build an affordable house or build a unit for staff to live in. I personally have a friend that was living in Ucluelet for a small time that had a job with the city. She couldn't find a rental, so she actually ended up leaving and going to the Whitehorse. So we totally understand your concerns, and we've been working a long time on this, and we do believe that this is a development that will bring positivity to the area. It'll alleviate the pressures of the rentals. Again, the comment about, there's a lot more than 2.6 people and we're stuffed in our units. The reason why we're stuffed in there, because of the lack of inventory, lack of rentals. This will alleviate that. We're building the rental building first. So that's the amenity that we're giving right off the bat. So, we appreciate the ability to talk today. Hopefully that will give some confidence for the people that have the concerns. And we love you, Hewlett. And we're not a big town developer. We're from Little Nanaimo. And we've been working on this for a long time and would love to see it go through versus the 76, vacation rentals that does nothing for the city. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Cody. All right, do we have any other in-person speakers?
First time.
First time. Sir? Sorry, Rob, you'll be next.
Thank you for making the time this evening. Resident 1373 Victoria.
And your name, sir?
Travis Wade.
Thank you.
Someone who works in permitting applications for housing myself. It's always a challenge, so I applaud you for forward, and it's important that the community sees that you've actually accounted for the numbers accurately. I think we would all agree the 2 million or 1.2 that you have is an order of magnitude off. Doing economic engineering myself, I tell you that we're seeing this on every project. The costs are expanding, and so at what point does the project not become viable? Where is the sensitivity analysis show us that, hey, if you increase 50%, what does that do to our water supply? If you reduce the size of this development by 50%, can you still make it work?
Excuse me. Just have to get you to tip up the mic a little bit. I think folks at home are having trouble hearing you.
Sure. I was pretty much wrapped up anyways. I think it would be important and of value for the community council who we elect and are going to be working with you to really understand how you're addressing these factors. So, thanks for your time and good luck walking this very tight little line that we've set out for you.
Thank you. Rob?
I'm Rob Adams, 1301 Eber Road, whereas I'm not directly, it doesn't really harm me directly, the building. I do believe the density of such a small area, of course, is going to be detrimental to our small community. My concern is at my house, as well as so many other people here, at any point in the year, our water is brown. Sometimes you have to run it for 3 hours in your outside tap just to clear the lines. As summer comes in, the volumes go up. Now it's not just once in a while that my water's brown. It's quite often that my water's brown. So adding another 25% to the community, the volume is going to go up significantly. I'm going to have brown water all year. My hot water tank lasts no more than 6 years, like anybody else. And is there anything down the road that's going to help alleviate some of this water? I know it's been an ongoing issue for the life of the town, but this is not going to help that by any stretch. So I just wonder if this has been taken into any consideration as far as that part of the infrastructure down the road.
With regards to water, I know that as part of the Water Master Plan, there has been a lot of work done looking at this development's effect on it. With regards to the brown water issue, I'm not sure that one is actually relevant to.
Well, it would be
but
because.
I understand that, yes, the potential is for it to be worse. Mr. Gregg, do you have a comment about the water? Not that it's a real question, because I'm not really sure how to go with that.
So through the chair, I think the water quality, I think I spoke previously about the water volume, delivering water and the sort of supply questions. In terms of the water quality, the district has, and again, forgive me for acting like an engineer because I'm not, but maybe not the most qualified person, but I'm here. So the district has worked and has put a grant application, which we're waiting with crossed fingers around filtration, putting in a filtration plant that would require, and that's a project that's in the capital plan, waiting to hear on a grant announcement, hopefully, to put in a filtration plant, which would be about a 6-year project that would address a lot of the sort of the base, and I'm stretching my understanding here, of the mineral content that leads to some of the brown growth.
I do notice in the summertime that it because of the volume that's going through the lines, so something like this would directly affect.
So through the chair, I'm not sure that's correct, whether it's temperature versus volume that's happening. Again, I'm not the expert on that. That's a little separate from the question of how much water do we have, because the brown is not a question of potability. It won't harm you, but it looks gross and stains clothes. So, but that is outside of sort of the Water Master Plan, looking at the quantity of water and delivering it to the right places for both drinking, washing, but also we look very closely at what are the fire flows, which is the highest demand for water in one specific spot. As if there were a structure fire and they needed to open up the hydrants, is there enough water going to be there? Is a big part of what the engineers have to plan for. The water quality question is a little more specific, and that they have done the analysis, go, okay, here's what we need. It's a matter of, right now we're hoping to hear on a grant that would allow us to go forward and do that work, because it is an expensive fix.
Oh yeah, I'm sure it is. Thank you.
Thanks. Are there any other first-time speakers? Bruce?
Bruce Forrest, I live at 372 Marine Drive. I have a question. If there are going to be like 400 people living up there, and the developer is going to be putting in all the infrastructure like the sewer lines and all that, that's all very well and good. However, can our sewage lagoons on High Focus Island handle the increased volume? They have not been upgraded or improved recently that I know of.
So with regards to the sewage lagoons, I believe they were recently upgraded. Mr. Gregg, can you confirm that for me if you know?
Through the chair, yes, there were upgrades that were done. They completed that just this last year. It was a multi-year upgrade that was done to sewage lagoons. And that is part of the analysis, and that DCC program of, as new development kicks in, there is a threshold at which further expansion of the sewage lagoon would be necessary. That this development doesn't in and itself trigger that. It's not, we still have reserve capacity, but that's part of why the best practice for municipalities is to have that long-range master plan for infrastructure so that we can see, how far down the road are we getting to that point, and do we have the financing in place to be able to do those expansions? That's what the engineers are paid for.
Did you have anything else?
No.
No. Thank you. Any other first-time speakers? Yep, Jovi.
My name's Jovi Corlazzoli, and I live on 1860 Peninsula Road. A lot of the questions I had were touched on more or less throughout the evening, but one that I don't think has been brought up yet. So I know there are a lot of people hoping this development will solve staff housing issues and the issues we've been having where local families have not been able to find places to live. So what I'm wondering is if there are any rules in place with this particular development to ensure that the houses will be sold or rented with the intention or with preference to local families rather than out-of-town people. So people with like a VOR postal code, like if they will have preference. Also, since these families can't seem to find, since housing is so scarce and locals of 20 years can't manage to find a place to live, is there anything to prevent people from buying these units as secondary vacation homes and leaving them empty for the majority of the year versus having them sold to families who want to actually live here?
With regards to the locals' first preference, Jovi, I am not sure that there is that particular, Mr. Gregg, can you correct me if I'm wrong on that one?
Through the chair, that is not part of the proposal. That it's not, preferential to a certain buyer. That these, as I tried to explain with the zoning, that the majority of the homes would not have short-term rentals. But they could be rented out long-term. And again, like any other neighborhood in town, if someone was wanting to buy a house and let it sit vacant, they could.
Yeah.
That's that's true of most of the properties in town. So whether that's likely I'd be guessing. I think I'd say it's highly unlikely. But there isn't a provision that has been proposed to make them available to certain groups of people, and we have to be cautious with the local government about that. So that it's fair. The one part that would have a housing agreement, which is where you can start as a local government to have regulations in place or an agreement to sort of say, well, who and how is the tenancy there, is with the rental apartment building. So that would be ensuring that it again doesn't become a condominium that's sold, and it can't be a short-term rental. That really then the owners, any owner, it would be on title, any owner of that building would have the option of either letting it sit vacant, if not that they would want to, or renting it out long-term with a tenancy.
Thanks. Any other first-time speakers? Are there any speakers calling in? Hit *9 to raise your hand. I do believe we have some.
There are no callers at this time.
Okay.
But we do have Zoom participants.
All right, then any speakers on Zoom online, if you've hit the raise your hand icon. Okay. Ms. Moran probably has you on a list.
Okay. Yes, to those of you on Zoom, I will call your name and unmute your microphone, and you will be able to speak. I think I'm going to go in the order that I've written down here. So the first speaker, Miles and Margaret Morrison, please. Just getting the mute sorted out here. Miles and Margaret Morrison, are you there?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Hi, thanks for doing this. It's very instructive and helpful and appreciate it. I'm Miles and Margaret Morrison, 1497 Victoria Road. We've been here over 30 years. One of the previous plans had a park in the center of the development, and the apartment building should really be there, not spoiling the feel and image of a pretty little seaside town. I don't know anyone who wants a Miami, Florida apartment building right at Big Beach. There, just as a note, there should be 2 access roads in and out of any area. Otherwise, you're going to have fire safety and flow problems. And I don't think people are happy about having everything dumped on Victoria Road. Council should not be able to just let the apartment building have an illegal and ugly 4th floor without public support. And why is this even being talked about? It leads you to wonder, like, who's benefiting and why? What's that about? And is it true that this unwanted 4th floor would cost the town untold dollars, millions probably over the years, in fire truck and fire hall unnecessary costs? A 3rd-story apartment building would be the same height as the peak of the community center. So just look at that and add a floor and see what you're talking about when you talk about a 4th floor. It just would be gross. And who would build this? I'm sort of curious. Like, does it just get all sold off and then anybody that wants to can buy parts and build it? Or like, do you lose control when that happens? I'll just continue asking my questions. I can repeat anything someone wants. And can water, sewer, power, internet services, like, is it gonna be enough? You know, like, and then when there's overruns in costs, like how many construction projects or big projects have you ever seen to go on budget? So when you talk about the water costing this, what happens when it's double that? Who pays it? You know, I guess that's it.
Thanks, Mr. Morrison. I'm going to comment. The water and sewer, we have been discussing quite a bit already, and the cost is the improvements to the infrastructure are carried by the developer, and then also the DCCs are contributed to some of that. If I'm wrong, I'm waiting for like a head shake from Mr. Craig. With regards to the access roads, there are 2 access roads currently proposed in the staff version. That would be one via, you can go say in via Victoria Road and out via Marine Drive. Mr. Gregg had a slide earlier showing that ingress and egress points. The issue with the reason why the change happened from the developer's proposal to the staff recommendation was because of fire and emergency services requiring both an ingress and an egress. With regards to the 4th story, that is something that it will have to come forward to council. There will be a point where public can comment on that. It will be heard in council. So I believe as to cost overruns, that I'm not going to comment on. Have I missed anything in your questions that I missed?
There was the fire truck.
Oh, the fire truck comment, that's,
And
oh, right, the
unless
fourth
I'm
story,
wrong on
right.
this, there is not, just this one apartment building does not trigger our need for the aerial device, which is probably the reference of the dollars for another engine and to accommodate that engine as well. This one development does not trigger that.
Yeah, that was, the fire chief did present a report to council regarding that. And as Mr. Gregg stated earlier, a fourth story, if that occurs, would be required to be sprinklered. And up to 3 stories is not sprinklered, but 4 stories and up must be. So that is a fire regulation that would have to be followed. And that also assists with the fire issues. Did I catch them all? All right.
I'm wondering who would build this?
The developer is building the apartment building would be built by the developer. And then the lots, I would assume, would be sold, and then the townhouses would be built by the developer, and I would assume the lots would be sold and possibly built by the owners of the lots. Mr. Gregg?
Through the chair, the indication is that this is a developer of housing, that they may build it all.
All right, new answer.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Thank you very much for your comments. And other Zoom participants?
Yes, the next participants I'll call on are Kim and Calvin Clark, please.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Kim.
Thank you for allowing the time to address council. I think as you're probably aware, we do have some opposition to the density on this particular development. We just feel it's too high for too small of an area. That density of this type should be spread out over the community and not focused in one specific area. In terms of the volume of traffic along Marine, of course, it's increasing all the time with just the level of visitors we're having into Ucluelet. But really, you're proposing 1 or 2 roads in and out of lot 16 to service a 25% increase in our population. And really, that seems not very reasonable, because we wouldn't spread out a 25% increase in our town over 2 roads. We're also seeing a large amount of traffic on Marine coming with the traffic through Weyerhaeuser and through Blackrock, and that again is going to increase again when the road through an industrial way is attached to Marine also. It feels like we have a few items, the carts before the horse here in terms of services and water, sewer, garbage, the taxing on our grocery store, single grocery store and restaurant, and our service workers, frontline workers. Of course, it's going to have a spillover to our medical doctors and our paramedics, as well as all the service workers in our restaurants. In terms of the sewer station, so I've been listening today to the comments that have been made, and so I just wanted clarification on the Victorian Marine sewer station. So for quite some time, this pump station hasn't been running very efficiently. And, at any time of the day or evening, we can leave as soon as we open our front door, we can smell it because it's not pumping properly. So you're saying that this would be upgraded by the developer, that he's offering to do this. But is this going to be on hold if this developer isn't approved or is delayed? I'd like to know specifically what's going to happen with that station, regardless of how this development proceeds. In terms of, quality of life, other folks have touched on this also, but for our community and residents, the long-term quality of life impacts with long lineups, and co-op has a hard time stocking shelves with the current demand before any increase in development, and that may be staged, but it's still something to be considered. And of course, it's nice to see that the rental housing component is being addressed, because we can see every day on our community board that there are a lot of long-term UQ folks looking for a place to live. And then I'm also interested in the rezoning, like with the R3. Does it allow short-term rentals? And would short-term rentals be only focused in the R3 townhome development? Is that the proposal? Or is short-term rentals going to be allowed in the R6 as well? And then, of course, the parking overflow, where is that going to spill over to? And who's going to enforce it? Is it going to spill over to Marine Victoria, the community center parking lot, the bike park, the skate park, as we do see a fair amount of that already?
Would you like me to address some of those, Kim, or do you want to keep going?
I just have a couple more and then I'm done.
Sure.
Just the increased demand and the impact on Big Beach, and the parkland and usable green space in any play areas, or the community amenities. Again, I know we talked about the DCCs, but how that equates to an amenity for community. If we could address that also. And then the apartment building, of course, everyone's talking about the height, and with whether that would be visually appealing. It seems like it would dwarf the corner of Marine and Matterson for sure. And thank you.
All right, I will tackle a couple of these and probably throw a few balls over to Mr. Gregg. With regards to the rezoning and the R3, there would not be short-term rentals allowed in the R3 zones. That is solely, I believe, in the R1. Correct, Mr. Gregg?
That's correct. The only component of the proposed zoning that would allow for any short-term rentals would be those 6 R1 lots on Marine Drive.
Okay. With regards to the sewer station, that fix, that the infrastructure improvement, which is putting a sewer force main up Matterson Drive, Mr. Gregg's going to have to help me. That I believe would happen regardless over time.
Through the chair, yes, it's a really good question, because the details, and it's, again, I'm not an engineer, but I think I understand it all, that the Victoria Road pump station, essentially it would benefit from the infrastructure this development would be putting in, because it would simply, you would bypass and take some load off of that Victoria and Marine Drive pump station, where currently flow is going to that old pump station. There'd be basically newer infrastructure carrying that volume and bypassing it. So it would take some of the load off. If this development, second part of that question, if the development were not approved or did not go forward, then the developer would not be paying for that work. However, that piece, and we're talking about that DCC project of putting the sewer force main up Matterson, is on the sort of work plan under the sewer master plan. So really, it's because this development, if it is going to go forward, they want to accelerate when that piece of infrastructure goes in, because they would need it. So yes, one day, but I can't speak to when that force main would go in. If this development didn't go forward, it would be sometime down the road, I think, because it's not immediately needed. The timing of it is being triggered by this proposed development. I hope that clarified things and didn't confuse it.
Thank you. Did that clarify it for you, Kim?
And that clarifies it. So it's on the docket for an upgrade, but there's no timeline attached.
Currently, no timeline unless a development such as this one triggers it.
Okay, thank you.
What else did we have? The usable green space and amenities issue. A couple of people have brought this up. And Mr. Gregg, I know we are not going to have the pool and fitness center as in the original plan from long ago. But there've been a couple people commenting on like a lack of park space. For instance, Lori mentioned it for her grandchildren. And there's just but there is gonna be the park buffer and there's gonna be the one small park within, but there's no other particular park. I'm looking for a term and park amenity.
Through the chair, that I think you've listed what are the park dedication, which is where land is given by the development to sort of new municipal parks. So it's the buffer strip along the Victoria Road, the back of those lots, and the new sort of smaller park that it's about the size of a large single family lot. That piece, it's a rock outcropping as well, sort of at the end of the ridge. But however, there are cash amenities being provided. There are parks DCCs that would be paid by the development as well. So there'd be contributions by the development for upgrades. Those wouldn't be on site, but could contribute to other features within our park network, whether that be Big Beach, whether it's in the park around the community center where we are right now. We're close, and then when I started out my comments earlier, I was sort of noting on the air photo that it is in walking distance, quite close to the school grounds as well, and other parks. We have a network of parks, and so those amenities in terms of cash could be used by the district to upgrade, add playground facilities, add other park space. But so that is the proposal, yes. That I think you've listed what are the dedicated areas of park land that this development would provide. Are really the buffer along Victoria and the one park space next to the ridge on Marine Drive.
Thanks. Mr. Gregg, have I touched on most of them, Kim?
Yes, thank you. Sorry, can you just clarify, because you said no short-term rentals other than the 6 lots on Marine that are in the R1 proposed zoning? And sorry, can you clarify for the townhome, that's R3, is that only live-in or long-term rental then?
I believe so. There are no short-term rentals allowed anywhere other than those 6 R1 lots. So
thank you.
Townhomes should be, like mine, owned or rented.
Okay, thank you.
Any other Zoom participants?
Then, yes, the next caller that I will call upon is, or the Zoom participant is Paula DeJong.
Hello. Hi, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can, Paula, thanks.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. I found the unmute. We live at 405 Marine Drive. We moved from Squamish, so we've seen quite a bit of development here that proceeded pretty quickly. And yeah, I have a few concerns just based on what we've seen here and what's being put forward from the new developer. I also share a lot of the concerns that have been mentioned regarding the density, environmental impacts, and increased pressure on our existing amenities. I do agree that we definitely need more rental and affordability for homes and units in Ucluelet. But my first concern is that this development doesn't actually address the issue of affordability. Cody mentioned that it may, because it'll increase the rental units and provide more properties for purchase on the real estate market. But this actually doesn't address the issue of affordability for locals. We've seen the mistake in Squamish here where people developed quick and promised rental units, but it doesn't actually set anything aside for locals to purchase or put caps on pricing. So it actually put more pressure on rental market and increased rental. So my first question is if you can clarify or expand on how this development will actually provide affordable housing for locals. And my second point has to do with parking. Again, seeing that in other places where developments are created with this 1.5 parking spaces, when in real life and real practice, you're going to have multiple parking spaces, especially if people have roommates in Ucluelet and they're trying to get affordable with more people packed into a home. So I'd like to see if there's clarification on the total amount of dwelling units and the total dedicated parking spaces. I think it's been touched on quite a bit, but regarding the road access off of Victoria, that's a really quiet street right now in the sense that there's lots of families out playing on the roads. And I'm curious if they've done a traffic assessment for the impact on Victoria Street, and why not use the existing proposed accesses that were in the original development for Marine and Matterson. And then my last point, which is probably more concerning in a personal manner because our property backs onto this area, but it has to do with the dedicated green spaces, the perimeters. And in the original existing development, there was a green space setback of 20 meters. In this proposal, you're decreasing it to 10 meters. What just came out on the call or on this meeting was that the townhouses that are backing onto Marine Drive, that's actually not a dedicated park space or a dedicated green space. It's actually just a building setback. So can you clarify what the permitted uses will be for those townhouses that back onto the land that has that 10-meter setback? Will they be able to clear any of the vegetation, or is this protected? Who's responsible for ensuring that this isn't damaged or cut? And how will you honor a 10-meter setback if you're planning to put a road access in on the south side of the development behind the Marine Drive single lots? So I think those are my main concerns.
All right, thank you, Paula. I'm going to do them out of order.
Okay.
The traffic assessment has not been done. That is done at the subdivision stage, and the developer has said that that will be part of the subdivision process, I believe. And that will look at the impacts on Victoria Road and Marine Drive. Regarding the dedicated green space and the building setbacks, Mr. Gregg, the original development said 20 meters. It now says 10 meters, and it's a setback and not a dedicated green space, correct? And can we clarify for Mr. John?
Through the chair, there are a couple of things there. The original zoning, comprehensive development zoning in 2003, there was some wording around a 20-meter setback. That was never registered by a covenant. It wasn't anchored in. Elsewhere, it talked about 10 meters. The proposal is to do a 10-meter dedicated buffer along the back of the Victoria Road properties, and the townhouse lot that would be behind the Marine Drive properties, I believe that we're talking about, would have a 10-meter setback. That's not a park dedication in there. They're proposing a setback on that townhouse lot. That townhouse development would be subject to a development permit authorized by council, and so in that you would see the landscape plans, the patio spaces, whatnot. That is a building setback, so the building walls would not be, and here I forgot to ask, could I have the, from the slideshow, could I have slide number 19 thrown up on the screen, please? Can we share the screen? Might help a bit, because there was a section, this is from one of the staff reports, and it showed a section through the land and the proposed townhouse buildings. That 10 meters is a building setback. There we are. And I don't imagine that anyone on Zoom would be able to see this, but I'll try and describe it as well. So if you had a section cutting through the townhomes, they're showing some 3-story and 2-story and then 1-story townhouses on the lot, and the property line would be here, and that this is showing off to the far right, imaginary house on Marine Drive, and they do slope up to the townhouse site. So this building setback means that the building face would be, at least 10 meters setback from the property line. That is not a park area, that is the still townhouse property. So it could have, here they're indicating some shrubbery and a terrace, or trees, or like this. Essentially what they're also showing is sort of sight lines that by stepping it back, they're trying to get views for all of the townhouses deeper in the site. That kind of detail would come out as a development permit, but what's been proposed so far is not, so far, a covenant or park dedication to, further create a green space. It really would be at the development permit stage that they would be submitting plans for council approval, and within that space you might have a mix of landscaping and outdoor space for the townhouse residents.
So essentially that 10-meter setback isn't a protected area. That means that people could in the future develop patios and encroach a bit more on the privacy of those houses that are existing. There's some really beautiful vegetation in there that really provides a buffer, and I'm just really concerned that by not having a dedicated park space like you have on Victoria, but just having a building setback, you're not actually dedicating a protected buffer zone for the existing residents.
Currently, that's true. It is just a 10-meter setback. There isn't a green space covenant included in that.
I have a question for Mr. Gregg.
Go ahead, Councillor
Sorry,
Cole.
question for Mr. Gregg through the chair. So in other zonings, in the R1 zoning, for example, what is the setback there? Is it 5?
Off the top of my head, 7.5 meters. 25 feet is the rear yard setback.
Okay.
6 meters in R1.
I thought mine was 5 on R1, but I don't know.
I have it here, if you'll bear with me.
I'm just wondering that it is bigger than what currently most of us would have.
Like, it's not technically, if people can still build their patios and terrace and garden space back there, it's not really a protected green space, which is what had been discussed in previous developments. So there's just some, older trees and forests back there that is really important to keep for environmental impact as well as privacy and light pollution.
No, I totally understand that, believe me. It's unfortunate that that wasn't covenanted somehow into the land, but yeah, currently they're proposing just the setback on that particular area along the townhouses on Marine Drive. Yes,
Okay.
Mr. Gregg.
Just to, through the chair, just to clarify, the R1 zoning, so that would apply to, say, those Marine Drive lots that back onto this property line to the townhouses. The front setback of the R1 is 7.5 meters. The rear yard setback is 6 meters for those properties, or 20 feet. On the R1 side of things, this townhouse piece is proposing a 10-meter setback.
Then it's the sides that are 5, maybe.
The side exterior is 5 meters.
Okay.
The side interior is 1.5 meters
okay.
of an R1 lot.
So I just would like that to be expressed, that I share the same concerns about the decreased park space and the decreased setbacks for green space that really would, when you're putting this much density in, would help impact the light pollution and noise pollution for the existing residents. Part of my question also had to do with the proposed road that goes right in behind to access those townhouses. If that's existing, how does that align with keeping park space and protecting that greenery?
Are you referring to the road access down to Victoria Road, or the?
Yeah, from proposed lot B, R3 down to Victoria Road.
Okay, are you referring to the developer's proposal, which is the one closest to the corner, or the one that staff proposed, which moved that road a little further in so that instead of the 2 ring roads, there was a connector all the way through from Marine Drive to?
I guess I was referring to the developer's one. so I'm in alignment with what the staff has proposed. And in one of the original proposals, there was access from Marine Drive based on that existing driveway that's in with those townhouses that are there right now, and then a road in from Matterson. So is there a reason that that's changed to put traffic onto Victoria?
So currently, there's a road in from Matterson to the apartment building. There's a road in from Marine that would connect through the backsides of the R1, through the R3, and connect to the townhomes, and then out Victoria Road.
Okay, and so I guess that the southern Victoria Road access, it's kind of off the books now, or is that just?
It's not the recommendation from staff. Staff has recommended that it have this through road so that we don't have two separate ring roads. Part of that is for fire and emergency services.
And traffic.
And for traffic flow.
Okay. And I guess my last question just had to do with the amount of dwelling units and dedicated parking spaces. So the total number of cars that are going to be parking in this area and where that overspill will go. Because we've seen that, unfortunately, where we moved from in Squamish, where they'll develop townhouses, high density, with no real parking spaces, and then that ends up spilling over onto other places and other roads. So I'm just concerned that that's actually taken into account when designing and developing the proposal.
Understandable. I know that a lot of the parking stuff will come through with development permits, but Mr. Gregg, would you like to speak as to the parking issue, because it has been brought up a few times tonight?
Certainly, through the chair. So there are no variances that are being proposed to the parking standards within our bylaw. So, single family homes, typically you'd have a minimum of 2 parking spaces. If you add a suite or a cottage, you add more parking. So they're not proposing to vary any of that. And again, the buildings haven't detailed the parking areas. There's a concept plan that's shown here, and they wanted to prove out, do we have enough land to meet the surface parking for the apartment buildings, say, or spaces for the townhouse lots. They've shown those in their concept plans. Those detailed plans would come forward as development permits. If this zoning were approved and those lots were created for those developments, and that detailed plan for where's the parking area and the green space and landscaping and all the things in the building design details would come forward. And if I may, I also sense there's I think I understand where some confusion around the access came from, and could I ask that the slide number 17 be thrown back up on the screen for a moment? And this was showing, and it's a little blurry on the upper corner, that image of the Big Beach Estates, which was part of the prior rezoning that created Lot 16. It does sort of indicate, so this is the driveway that goes straight up the hill into the ridge. These are the 2 sort of buildings on either side of the ridge development, and it goes up and ends. This original plan sort of indicated that, or anticipated that would extend through, and that there'd be access into this development and then a connection out on Matterson. There was, at the time that this was approved, the ridge, there was no, this was not dedicated as road, and there is no statutory right-of-way to allow public access through here. So that connection is not on the table to essentially use their private driveway to access this. And then could I ask you to go to slide 11, please, which shows the layout of what's being proposed here. So I think the question, or what I was hearing, was that the caller's comments was, this had been what it really was sort of laid out by the proponent, by the applicant, using what is a currently publicly owned access point to develop that as the driveway into this townhouse development. We've raised some concerns about how close that is to the intersection, and just in terms of traffic flow and safety and visibility, and that a better pattern would be to use slightly to the north. There's another access, which is shown in blue, I guess, on the right-hand side of the screen for those who are on Zoom and maybe can't see my little red dot on the screen here, but that would come in and then service this internal townhouse driveway, and so it would avoid having that potential conflict of having a driveway right by Marine Drive.
Thank you, Mr. Gregg. Does that clarify that for you, Paula?
Yes, yeah, it does. And I guess my last point was just how the developer Cody had mentioned that he believes this development will positively impact affordability by increasing our rental units and providing more properties on the real estate market. I just want to know if there's anything actually established or in writing where the developer is actually providing dedicated units that are price capped or for locals only. We've seen that mistake happen here in Squamish as well, where things just weren't developed with a price cap for locals. So while it's pitched that this is going to increase affordability and provide more needed rental units, it doesn't actually positively impact our locals and provide affordable housing. So I'm just wondering if you can clarify or expand on how this development will be providing affordable housing for locals.
My understanding is that affordable housing is not a component of this development, but please clarify for me a little bit more about the affordable issue there, Mr. Gregg.
Through the chair, there is no proposal to have a rental cap or have rent restricted affordable housing as part of this proposal. What they're proposing is to create what is certainly a rental apartment building, but it would be free market. So it would be adding to the rental supply within town, and there's a cap on the size of it, but that's certainly what the current proposal is.
Madam Chair, we have the developer who's raised his hand at this point in time.
Cody, if you'd like to answer this, that would be great. Or perhaps
Can you hear me?
comment on it.
One second. All right, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So to talk a little bit about the affordability aspect, one avenue that we are working on is partnering with CMHC in their program. In their program, they mandate that you have to use a certain portion of the apartment rental units as affordable units. As well, these are all long-term rentals. None of these are short-term rentals. So it's market rents. So we're not sitting here jacking it up for rich people to come for a week. They're going to be for locals. They're going to be for people that are working in the community that are currently sharing 4, 5, 6, to a room in either staff housing or crammed accommodations. So I think that this clearly does help with regards to any kind of affordability. With Paula's comments with regards to Squamish, and it's great that she moved to Ucluelet from Squamish. It's a beautiful spot where a lot of people want to move to. My guess is that those places that were built that were talked about as rentals didn't have the same things that we're putting in place with limiting short-term rentals. This is something that will cause the demand to decrease with the supply. The same thing with the 30 units, which is the max that we're going to be able to build. We may only be able to build 28. And again, we're doing smaller lots for affordability. This is a big thing that we heard from the people we talked to over the last 8-9 years in the community versus a 76 unit vacation rental development. And the one thing that has come up a few times with regards to the fitness in the pool, if you did a deep dive on that, the covenant doesn't talk about the size of the pool, doesn't talk about the size of a fitness thing. And so there's a lot of grayness to that. So just because if we did do the 76 unit short-term vacation rentals, it doesn't mean that you're going to get an Olympic sized pool there. So you have to understand the amenities that you're getting with regards to this development with the free lot that's going to be used for affordable housing, with all the DCCs, the sewer and water upgrades that we're doing now versus the people that have to smell the sewer stations that are overloaded as is. These are all positives. So I hope that people can see that.
Thanks, Cody. Did that deal with everything for you, Paula?
Sort of. I just want to clarify that density by developers does not mean affordability. Our community has one opportunity to develop this land properly and within our community vision and goals. So that means that we have to negotiate community amenities that provide real value. And if this developer really cares about affordability, then they would be working with the community to dedicate units that are price capped for locals and dedicating green space instead of just maxing the number and volume that they can fit on there. So I think that it does address all of my concerns. I just really want us to do this properly. So I appreciate you guys taking the time to get everybody together via Zoom and wherever we are.
And to add on to you there, Paula, you know, us doing the designated rental, I think, is giving you that amenity of, you know, affordability, so that it is going to be used for locals. It's going to be used for people that are struggling to keep jobs there and that are not commuting from Port Alberni. I think it's a huge win for the community.
Thank you both for your comments. Do we have any other Zoom participants who would like to speak?
Yes, we do. I'll call next on Monique Copeland, please.
Hi, I'm Monique Copeland. I live at 1309 Victoria Road. I echo a lot of the concerns from other residents here, but I do have a couple new points I think that haven't been mentioned. One thing I wanted to clarify was
Did we lose her?
I don't know. The problem is perhaps on her end. I haven't muted her.
Sounds like reception.
We've just lost you, Monique. I'm not sure.
We can move on to
come back.
the next speaker, and I will mute her for now, and then she can hop back in, raise her hand if she needs to, if she'd like to speak.
All right, sounds good. Who's next? We'll come back to you, Monique, promise.
Next, I'd like to call on Carla Robison.
Hello, council residents. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can, Carla.
Hi, my name is Carla Robison. I live at 1435 Victoria Road. I've been in this location for 15 years and sorry not to be present today. And I want to thank council for having this meeting, and I really appreciate council's questions from the July 13th council meeting, along with some of the developers' responses to those questions. However, I do have a variety of questions, many from the letter I prepared from the public hearing meeting, as well as a few new questions. So my first burning, dying question is, I understand that staff has worked with the developer on this proposal. What I'm curious about is if staff and the developer are referencing our current OCP rather than the draft 2020 OCP during the development of the proposal.
She wants to know if the reference with working on this with the developer is referencing the current OCP or the new draft one. So that'd be to Mr. Gregg.
Through the chair. I'm not sure how much the developers considered the draft OCP. It's certainly out there. It's been, in our minds as part of the discussions that we've had. The current in effect OCP, or official community plan bylaws, from 2011. But I think that many of the policies that the developer has had sort of discussions with around things like affordable housing are elements that they've been what I'm trying to say is I'm pretty confident that they are aware of our draft OCP and its content. I'm not sure of the specifics of that. I mean, if I guess the question of the applicability of the official community plan, where it would really impact on, say, the development permits, if the rezoning application that's in front of council were approved and they came in the next phase of development permits, today it would be the development permit guidelines under the 2011 OCP that would apply. If the new official community plan bylaw were adopted, it would have a new set of development permit guidelines that council's aware of. That's probably the most applicable piece.
Thank you. Does that cover that one for you, Carla?
Yeah, that clarifies it, and that scares me because we've been working hard as a community on the 2020 plan. Yes, at the public hearing that was for the OCP just a month or so ago, there was some concerns and questions, but in general, this plan is very concise and thorough and considers a lot of the concerns, considerations, questions, comments that citizens of the community, longstanding citizens at that, have raised tonight. And big picture items like climate change, sustainability, water management. So personally, for the largest development project this community has ever seen, we're looking at a 25% increase. I would hope that council is going to ensure that our 2020 plan will be incorporated into the design and development and proposal moving forward. There's a lot of great stuff in there. There's a lot of great policies. It really clarifies that why questions haven't been raised potentially by council in particular to the OCP policies. I've got a variety of examples of them, which I think that if they were incorporated into this development, we wouldn't be going in circles tonight, asking the same questions, raising the same concerns. If we could just start by referencing our community plan that we've been working hard at all these years, like, it's just logical to me. So I'm unclear how the current proposal being presented to council, therefore the community, without these considerations of these policies, is even brought forward. I guess that's my high level question. How have we gotten to a second reading, public hearing? How are we here today going in circles, asking these same questions without even taking a step back, saying, hey, we're trying to move forward with the finalization of our OCP. There's, yes, some things that need to be adjusted and accommodated and updated, but we've got a large scale development project, not just Lot 16, but many others on the go. Should we not just start at square one and make sure that our foundation, our community Bible, is in place? If I heard correctly tonight, staff's only change proposed to this proposal was a traffic management plan on Victoria Road, therefore shifting the road north. I just wonder, does the planners think everything else is ready to go for this proposal?
Bear in mind, currently we are just dealing with the rezoning. There's a lot of development still to happen, development permits. That is when the OCP will be referred to, as Mr. Gregg mentioned. We are looking to have a meeting regarding our OCP in September.
To me, I'm unclear as to why staff has not ensured that this proposal is sustainable and abides to our community's OCP policies. I don't understand what the point of our OCP 2020 plan is if we're not incorporating the current policies into this proposal development. To me, it's the cart before the horse. So for the developer to say, or the staff to say, council to say, we're going to answer all these questions later. Well, no, you've given the green light. So to me, these questions need to be addressed prior to moving forward. And then we are not going to go in circles and continue to ask the same questions over and over and over again. We can actually get some answers and move towards solutions. So example, affordable housing policy, 3.143, rezoning applications involving more than 5 dwelling units shall provide a statement describing the affordable housing components achieved by the proposal. And policy 3.134, ensure larger developments are required to provide affordable housing as a portion of each development phase. So these policy statements are not in line with the current proposal. Rental, as we've all been saying tonight, does not equal affordable or attainable. Why is affordable housing not considered in regards to the provincial regulations, best management practices around the actual true definition of what is affordable? So incorporating not only our OCP policies, but provincial government best practices, UBCM's best practices, BC Housing and the Housing Hub's best practices. That's one example. Another example is cost amenities. So I would like an answer as to how $1,000 per lot was established. How did that come up? I heard earlier tonight that the overall current real cost is $12,000 a lot, if I heard correctly. And speaking with urban planners, I understand that 5,000 is 6,000 per lot is more appropriate. So how did $1,000 per lot come up? And is this adequate to determine the amount of infrastructure support that's going to be required for this development? That's one amenity that we've heard tonight. I want to know if this is adequate.
Yeah, I will let Mr. Gregg speak to this particular one.
Just through the chair, just hearing, I think maybe there's confusion of two different things in the $1,000 amenity contribution versus the development cost charges of the DCCs, because the developer in this case would be paying both. They're kind of two different things. The amenity contribution of $1,000 per door is essentially a cash contribution they are offering to the community for use for whatever purpose. The development cost charges, which add up to, it's $12,000 per lot for single family, $9,000 and round numbers for multifamily. Those charges are specifically earmarked for water, sewer, roads, parks, drainage, infrastructure programs that are established by bylaw. And so the developer would be paying both of those. It's not a reduction from 12 to 1, if I sense some confusion in there.
Does that clarify that for you, Carla?
Yeah, that helps. But I still want to know if this is adequate based on the planner's knowledge on what other communities charge. And the very, very high density that's being proposed here, and the lack of other cost amenity contributions, which I'll get to next. But I'd like an answer to this question, please.
Mr. Grebe, would you like to?
Through the chair, there's, I think, sort of two answers to that question of adequacy. As for the development cost charges, those are established by bylaw, and they need to be approved by the province. So there's an engineering formula that goes into identifying what are the costs that are put in place. And so other, different communities have different rates, but really it's established by bylaw. And that's something that, as council's aware, we're looking at updating those, but that's a little separate from the amenities. The question of is the amenity contribution enough is really a question of council, for council, that council's role is in this to make a decision on whether to approve or not approve what's being requested here, which is a change of the zoning. And that is, it's not a black and white table of what is all the pieces that add up. It's really that question of overall, does this development represent or propose a net benefit to the community? And that includes all kinds of things, including housing and parks and environment and character and cash for services and for utilities and for other uses. So that question is really not one that I could speak to, other than to say that really is the decision ultimately informed by the community comment, like what's happening this evening, that really that's what the elected officials will ultimately weigh on whether or not to approve what's being proposed.
Thank you.
In a line with, or just expanding on the cost amenity question, and thanks for answering that, Bruce, that helps. I want to just note the small park space that has been proposed and just echo other citizens that have mentioned their concern with lack of park space. So, and it goes back to my high level question of, how have we gotten to this point where we haven't ensured that there's adequate green space in this proposal? So increased density means increased green space. I mean, I'm not a planner, but that's the way I understand it. So if we're going to look at a Euro style type density, I believe central squares or green spaces are incorporated. So where is the central park in this proposal? Where will the kids play? Where will the wildlife, nature, like where's that balance? Where's the sustainability here? So I guess council can't really answer that, and maybe staff can answer why more green space hasn't been incorporated in this proposal. And I just, before you answer, Bruce, maybe I just want to also mention in Echo Paula, like other Victoria Road citizens, we purchased our homes years ago with the understanding that there was a 20-meter green space buffer. And I understand that restrictive covenants weren't clearly identified or defined within the current zoning. That's very unfortunate, but I do hope that council considers what the previous, I'm going to quotation covenants were, being the cost of many contributions to the community. Nobody's expecting an Olympic-sized pool, but a pool and a fitness center, as well as that 20-meter green space. So, and that green space is highlighted in our 2020 OCP, and all of the importance about that green space for the wildlife corridors. I mean, the visitors come here because they want to see that. We want to live here because we want to be among nature. And so to me, I strongly feel that the green space, additional green space is required for this proposal. There's, as well as the protection of old growth trees and other large coniferous trees, as well as the habitat protection for wildlife such as amphibians, reptiles, mammals, birds that utilize this green space as habitat and as that movement corridor. There are a ton of green frogs back there, and tree frogs, and I really feel that the green space needs to be expanded, and that the previous 20 meters, I understand it's not a restrictive covenant, but that it should be considered. And I also have concerns that if the 10-meter green space behind Victoria Road is to become a parkland area through the District of Euclid, does that mean that rather than a green space covenant, does that mean that a trail network could go in that green space area? So a few questions in there, Bruce. Hopefully you can help answer some of those.
Okay, so I'm hearing the question about what happens with the park dedicated space along Victoria. Like, would that have trails, for instance? And Mr. Grigg, could you?
Through the chair. The Dedicators Park, they're not proposing to construct a trail through there as part of this development. It would be part of the public park system. I can't speak, the question was, could a trail be built? That's a bit of a what if. So yes, that our parks network includes things like trails and facilities that, that could, it's not part of the current proposal. could one day the community consider that if there was demand for it? Well, yes, that's something that a council in the future could look at, but that is not what's being proposed here.
So at the moment, it is a 10-meter green space, protected, park dedicated. Does that answer that part of the question, Carla?
Well, I guess, I mean, it's like, why isn't it? Like, I guess that, but that's for council to decide. You know, would it be better if that became a covenant green space? Therefore, we're not going to have any more trail networks. I mean, that is the movement corridor for the wildlife, and 10 meters is too skinny, and it's going to wipe out the frog habitat. So I guess it answers my question, but it doesn't help. But that's now, I guess the question gets reflected back to council. And if I could ask Mr. Gray, sorry, I was calling you Bruce earlier, if, like, why more green space wasn't incorporated into this proposal, that just that high level question to really balance the proposal's very high density ask and staff trying to balance back the importance of green space, reflecting on potentially, like, particularly our OCP 2020 plan.
All right, so my understanding is that we're looking for why there isn't more green space in this proposal. The proposal, I believe, comes from the developer, but Mr. Gregg, can you comment on that?
Certainly, through the chair, and I'll ask, could I have slide number 14 put back up again, please, on the screen so everyone can see it? The question, I mean, yes, what's being proposed is the balance of what the developer has brought forward. And there was an earlier question about what, you know, the only change being around the roads, and where we're not asking for other changes. I would share that a bit of a watershed moment in our discussions with the developer was when they mentioned that apartment building might be a rental-only building. That did change the conversations, and certainly around the conversations around would that be the first thing built. And they've committed that yes, and council has made that a condition. They've indicated that would be a condition of final approval, is that the rental apartment building would be built first. To answer the question around why would this density be something that we think council might entertain and that the community might want to consider, is that I'm going to point at the upper map, which is the sort of current uses, where it does stand out as sort of a vacant infill lot that is within the fabric of what are the neighborhoods around it. And this is a walkable location. This is in the center of town, and if you were going to add 112 dwelling units over time in town, another way of looking at it is, well, where's the best place to put them? Is it to spread them out into undeveloped areas, or to put them closer to where the facilities and amenities are, like the community center and the parks? The schools are half a block away. Those things start to argue for this might be a proper location for more housing. Is the current proposal too much? Certainly council is hearing feedback from the community on that. And there were some questions earlier on in the process about, put to the developer, as I recall, about, well, could you just lower the density? And for them, they have a balance of the costs of all of the servicing, and part of the reason for the density is to pay for all of it, including the rental apartment building. So they have put forward this plan, and so we've given the review of it and are proposing some suggestions that we suggested would make it better, like the road access and having the flow through. But I think overall, I've recommended that this is worth considering as an addition to the housing, looking at the whole of town. I don't know if that answers or satisfies the question, but I hope it sheds some of the thinking. And again, this is draft, the official community plan that's on the screen now, but the thinking, and this sort of shows a pattern for Lot 16, but that it and other areas should be comprehensively planned according to that plan, so that there is adequate green space. And certainly there's you can see on the map that there's green space in the immediate vicinity of Lot 16 and substantial opportunities for creating more park space within our parks and trails network on other lands as well.
Thank you. Does that help, Carla?
Yeah, it helps. I recognize some of the answers there but it really doesn't help the wildlife corridor that currently exists and the current wildlife that's existing there. And, you know, when you look out at this map, it's like the northwest side of town is green, and that's all the upcoming new development areas. And it's like trying to find the balance is, well, let's look at it from a land use planning perspective in a bigger lens. And it's very, very high density, and the wildlife will suffer. It's with the current proposal, in my opinion. But I will move on to my next question, comment, if I may.
Just a moment. Yep. Yeah. We do have a number of other people, so Carla, if you could maybe ask one or two quick questions, and then we will move along.
Yeah, I've been asking a variety of questions throughout this process. The letter that I wrote during the public hearing, I really was hoping to get some feedback. I understood that tonight was my opportunity to ask my questions. I've got a whole bunch more. I recognize that it's getting late and people are tired. I haven't had dinner yet. I understand. More people need to, share their questions and concerns, but I would like answers to my letter. And to defer those questions until the development permit's in place, until different phases of the proposal are being conducted, it doesn't seem adequate to me. I guess I'll try to summarize my questions and comments, but it's unfortunate that we're not, and this is what I find is happening tonight. People are coming forward with questions, comments, concerns, but we don't get answers. And I really want to start hearing some answers, and I really appreciate the answers I've heard and what has been written down, and the clarity that we're not abiding to our 2020 OCP is an aha moment for me. And I really hope that council takes consideration of that. A technical question I had about infrastructure regarding the water and sewer. So the 2019 engineering report, therefore the technical memorandum to review water main servicing requirements and the sanitary sewer servicing requirements does not consider, from what I can tell, the potential maximum occupancy of the current proposal. So if there's 112, 125 units, that seems unclear to me, plus carriage homes, and you multiply that by 3, potentially 4 people. We're looking at a 375 to 500 people in that 12-acre parcel. So I'm wondering why this engineering assessment did not base it on the maximum proposed density. And I'm also wondering if that assessment back from it was a while ago, 2019, I believe, considered all the other development proposals that are currently underway.
We actually have discussed this earlier. The water master plan and the sewer master plan do take into account both maximizing this development and looking towards the Weyerhaeuser and the Oni lands. We've actually already discussed that they look at what the water needs, the sanitary needs, and that is the reason why there are infrastructure improvements as part of this development.
Okay, so if I can just get some clarity then, if I could ask Mr. Gray, does that technical memorandum, if that review considered the maximum density, let's say 500 people, would that change the results in that report that's in the most recent agenda package?
Mr. Gregg, do you want to?
Through the chair. So the civil engineers who did the report, they base their analysis on some engineering practices that are based on averaging of densities and whatnot. And I'm not a civil engineer to comment on or to question the methodology that they use. These are the engineers that we've used quite a bit to advise us on our infrastructure. And so peak demand is based on, Statistics Canada and the observation within towns and cities of similar, there's guidelines, as I understand, for engineers, sort of standard tables that they use for generating these. But it was based on, taking the developer's plan and their proposal, taking those number of units and the type of units that were being proposed, adding in the assumed, average occupancy and the demand that you would see on those. So if I think the question was a bit like if it were changed somewhat or increased, maximized, would it have different results? Possibly, but I don't think I can add to the sort of a different scenario other than that what they had looked at was the developer's plan for this site on lot 16, calculate out what they, using their engineering practices, would show would be the sort of maximum load or loads at different times of day, which are very characteristic of neighborhoods, and see how that would impact our infrastructure.
Thank you. I will give you one more, Carla, but then we do need to let somebody else speak. We can come back afterwards.
Okay, great. I'll just end off and maybe say something later, but if council could please review the letter provided to the public for the public hearing. It points out a variety of policy points from the 2020 OCP. And I would really, truly hope that these points are going to be incorporated into the development proposal. Traffic, for example, is a really big one for residents, the congestion and road capacity concerns, particularly on Victoria Road, Marine Drive. And from what I understand, that assessment will come later. And so what I'm wondering is, does that assessment take into consideration not just, like the whole surrounding area and the impacts and safety issues on Victoria Road, Marine Drive? And yeah, I mean, I have tons more questions, but I would like to know that one at least. And then if council can please just, hopefully I can get some answers to the other policy questions that I've highlighted.
Two things. Bear in mind that the 2020 OCP is still in draft format and has not been adopted. So the policies that are in effect currently are from the 2011 OCP. Regarding the traffic study, that would be part of the subdivision process, which we've referred to before, and that will look at traffic around the site and its impact on the roads around the site. So Victoria Road, Marine Drive, Matterson. That is my understanding, at least. Am I correct, Mr. Gregg? I'm getting a head nod. All right, Carla, we're going to move to somebody else if on Zoom, but feel free to raise your hand when we do the second round.
Madam Chair, Monique Copeland has raised her hand.
Oh, perfect.
So I'm going to go to her next.
Monique. Let's try this again.
Hi, hopefully I don't lose my internet connection this time. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. So I'm going to try and stick to new points only. I did hear an answer to my one question about the 10-meter space behind Victoria Road, that would ideally stay as green space and not be developed with any trail system through it. I do agree that with the previous speaker that it is not a wide enough space to maintain our the ecosystem for our amphibians and wildlife. So that is a concern for many residents. The density is a big concern for me. I work at the high school just down the road, and I walk to work every day. We have no sidewalks. So most of the time, especially when it's raining, I walk on the road. There is no parking already or additional parking on on the road for vehicles already along Victoria Road. With increased population, there will be increased traffic. People already use Victoria Road as a deferred road so that they're not going through the school zone. So there's already increased traffic along Victoria for people trying to sidestep the speed limits and speed bumps along there. So that's a big concern for me. On top of that, this increased population, if we're increasing our population by approximately 25%, the school that we are currently building, our secondary school, which is for Tofino and Ucluelet students, I'm not sure if many people know, but all of our classrooms are actually being built smaller than our current classrooms. So where are we going to school all of these people with this current increasing population that we already have? We have no other space to build another new school, as far as I know. So that is a huge concern for me. In addition to the current stress on amenities for residents, emergency services, emergency preparedness in the event of a natural disaster, food security, water security, and then now just what I've heard recently, that we are basing a lot of this on our OCP from 10 years ago is another big concern. A lot of things have changed in 10 years. So I think we have a lot of answers that need to come to us before a lot of residents are going to be on side with this. I think that's all I need to say at this point. So thank you for listening.
Thank you for your comments, Monique. Is there anybody else on Zoom with their hand raised? Yes.
Yes, we have two callers or two Zoom participants. One is Matt, and I'm wondering, I can unmute him. It may be Matt Harbage, I'm not sure. We haven't heard from Carla Strickland yet, though, and she's on, so maybe I'll go with Carla first, and okay.
Okay.
Carla, are you there?
Oh, it's you.
Oh, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, this is Samuel Casavan, I guess, talking on Carla's account. I've just wanted to show my support for the development, I guess, maybe.
Point of order, just can you give us your address? Sorry.
Oh, yeah, I'm from 1333 Helen Road.
Thank you.
Yeah, maybe as opposed to many of the commenters before, I'm in support of the development, and I'm happy that some high density residential areas are being developed in town. It is my opinion that high density would be good around the downtown core, and to me that represents sustainable development as opposed to low density and big parking lots around town, which that's urban sprawl, and I don't think that's environmentally sustainable either. And yeah, and I just wanted my opinion to be represented. I think it was maybe misrepresented in this meeting. I'm sure there's a lot of people thinking like I am, we're a family looking to buy in the area, and it's been really challenging. So more supply is very welcome from us. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments.
Okay, I'll proceed to the person as Matt here, just Matt. Matt?
Hey, sorry, my account just says Matt. It's Matt Harbage again, but I can go some other time if other people need to speak.
Do we have any other participants with their hands raised right now that have not spoken?
We're clear.
we're clear.
Hey, sorry, I had to run there. Couple more things that came to mind, like listening to the developer and things like that. Affordable. He says he's working with CMHC. I think, if he is working with CMHC, it'd be great to see some paperwork that he is working with CMHC before we go ahead and approve an apartment building, or make it a requirement that he works with CMHC. Because if a developer does work with CMHC, that means the rental, he gets money from the government, which is great for him, but also means there is a rental cap. It means it can't get out of control. They can't get up to $2,000, $3,000 a month for a 2-bedroom apartment because it's market driven, not affordable driven. And I hate listening to people that have not really that many ties to town, it seems. Try to dangle a carrot with saying, well, it's no guarantee I have to build an Olympic-sized pool or a big fitness center. I can just build something small. That kind of shit, honestly, it doesn't really prove your worth. Do you know what I mean? Also, using the same engineers, like reading through all these documents, it's the same engineers that the town uses. I'm wondering if there's a conflict of interest there in using all the same engineering. I'm not sure. Just asking that question. And also, as far as the ACRD is concerned, we use their landfill. We have permission to use the ACRD landfill. Environment Canada, as time goes on, we actually have to be reducing emissions from landfills. So is this development in line with what we have an agreement with ACRD and things like that? So there's just some more questions that popped in mind listening to this whole meeting. But thanks again. I know it's late. Thanks again, everybody, for your time. It's never easy, but thank you.
Thanks for your comments, Matt. Do we have anyone else?
Not at this time.
So then we go back to in-person first. Second go.
Have we received any emails to communityinput@ucluelet.ca?
Yes. First of all, we received a letter, handwritten. It's titled Lot 16 Project. Dear Council, I'm writing this letter in opposition to the Lot 16 project. I do not oppose the need for affordable and sustainable housing here, but we need to address how we manage the nightly rental properties in the community first, ! I also fear there will be great environmental impact at Big Beach. Water, infrastructure, parking, congestion on roadways in the surrounding area, etc. Before council does grow any more, before UCluelet does grow any more, we need to fix what is broken first, ! We need to address some zoning and bylaws that have allowed so many to buy second and third properties strictly geared for nightly rentals, ! Profiting off housing is unethical. Now some people will never be homeowners and some will end up homeless just so people who can't already afford housing can make more money. Address what we have first, fix it, then put carefully planned projects similar to this later. Elise Eiford. All right, we have a couple letters that have been forwarded by Cody Drager. The first is from Julia DeWolf. It's from Julia DeWolf, 400 Mackenzie Beach Road. To whom it may concern, my name is Julia DeWolf, and I live at Middle Beach Lodge in staff housing. I'm writing in support of the rezoning application at Lot 16 Marine Drive, UCluelet. I've been in the area for the past 2 summers, working, playing, and living here. I love it here and love all the people I am meeting. However, the biggest issue facing people trying to come and work here is accommodations. Either we're crammed into staff accom or we're living in a small home with too many people. The West Coast is in desperate need for more housing, and it is my understanding that this development will mainly have long-term rentals, not short-term. I currently work as a lead housekeeper, and I'm constantly fighting for more staff but with lack of rooms, people come and go, which is killing the business here. I would like to see mention that. I would also like to mention that living in housing provided by employers is a recipe for unfair working conditions. Some employers in Tofino know that they can hold your accommodation over your head and treat you unfairly without fear of losing staff because there's no other option for a place to live. We need housing so badly, and this seems like an amazing opportunity for that to happen. Julia DeWolf, Mackenzie Beach Road, or 400 Mackenzie Beach Road. Okay, moving on to the next one. This letter is from Colleen Broekhuizen, excuse me for the pronunciation. She's at 1112 Coral Way. Hi there. Regarding planned development in Euclid to create more housing, I would like to express my support for the plans. We own a house in Euclid and spend a lot of time there. I understand there's a serious lack of housing available, which is affecting business operations in some cases. The creation of new housing units would be a positive thing for the community. All right, moving to the next one. So we have a letter from Destiny Pruchny and Andy Berlinger, 1449 Victoria Road. Dear Mayor and Council members, thank you for the opportunity to provide additional comments relating zoning amendment bylaw number 1284, 2021. First off, I'd like to commend Council for listening to the public and scheduling this committee of the whole meeting to get further public input into the proposal for Lot 16. I understand there are many perspectives and that Council has an unenviable job of balancing these and determining what is best for the overall community. I do want to make it clear that I want to see Lot 16 get developed. However, I have some concerns with the current proposal. The developer's motivation is to make a profit. They do not want to build at this density out of the kindness of their hearts. They're trying to maximize the money they will make. Council has an opportunity to maximize the benefit provided to the community in exchange and ensure that the best interests of residents are represented. I therefore ask for Council to consider the following. 1. Please continue to show your commitment to public engagement and roll back the part of the zoning amendment bylaw and associated restricted covenants that allows for a 4-story apartment building subject to Council approval. I ask that you go with recommendations in the staff report to Council on March 23rd that a variance to allow a requested 16-meter height for the 4-story on the proposed apartment building would best be considered under development variance permit once architectural plans have been submitted. Given that the building will become a landmark in the community and the overall height and how the massing of the building is handled in the final design will have a significant influence on the character of this corner of the community. 2. Please consider whether the proposed density is appropriate and in line with Euclid's West Coast and Fishing Village heritage. A development of this density will transform this community. The existing CD2A zoning allows half of this density, or up to 76 condos. I absolutely understand that more diverse housing options are needed, although I think that you can achieve this without the density proposed in Lot 16. According to the West Coast Land Use Study, the entire West Coast population is projected to grow by between 13 and 646 residents over the next 5 years, and between 175 and 1,311 in the next 10 years. Is there truly a demand for this many houses in this high density, given all the other vacant and underutilized land available for development? Should this large of a proportion of the projected population growth be housed in one block? Will the next residents and guests want to leave the city in line? Will new residents and guests want to leave the city to live in, visit this type of density? Please ask for suitable amenities. 3. Please ask for suitable amenities for such large-scale development. The existing CD2A zoning already had the 10-meter buffer as a density bonusing amenity alongside a new swimming pool and fitness facility, and notably more green space than in the new proposal. Is providing a postage stamp-sized park along alongside a $1,000 door fee paid to the district and small serviced residential lot transferred to the district with suitable amenities for essentially doubling the allowable density? Is it sufficient to keep the same size 10-meter buffer next to such a large development backing onto residential properties? Would it be more suitable for a 15 to 20 meter or 20 meter considering this current wildlife corridor? Considering this is currently a wildlife corridor. These amenities seem to pale in comparison to the scale of the development. Previously, this municipality received a skateboard park, basketball court, tot park, as well as contributions towards a new community center and multi-purpose sports field in exchange for other developments. I know that the residents have been asking for community.
Maybe I should just not ask.
Can you just? Thank you.
Oh.
Let me start again. Previously, this municipality received a skateboard park, a basketball court, and tot park, as well as contributions towards a new community center and multi-purpose sports field in exchange for other developments. I know that the residents have been asking for a community pool and fitness center for a long time. Isn't that the type of legacy that the council would want to leave behind, rather than one where a developer makes millions while providing very little benefit to the existing residents? 4, please demonstrate the commitment to affordable housing outlined in the OCP. The 2020 draft OCP states rezoning applications involving more than five dwelling units shall provide a statement describing the affordable housing component achieved by the proposal, and ensure large developments are required to provide affordable housing as a portion of each development phase. According to the West Coast Land Use Study, it is estimated that 23.7% of the households are in core housing need. This proposal does not have any social or below market housing. Small lots do not equal affordable or even attainable. Current market rates for a 1,100 square foot townhouse down the street is close to $700,000 plus GST. I know that we're in the midst of a housing crisis, but I wonder what proportion of the community in need of housing can afford that. When you leave today, I ask you to look across the street and imagine a building the size of Black Rock there. Think about how this impacts this area and the residents. Go down to Big Beach, look back up the hill, and again imagine this building. Then imagine the impact of 375 to 500 more people using this beach and how that affects the community as a whole. Walk down Victoria Road and imagine 375 to 500 additional residents using that road. The number one priority in the District of Coolidge strategic plan is managing growth and maintaining quality of life. The plan specifically recognizes that an increasing demand for housing and development driven by thriving tourism has the potential to diminish the character and livability of our community. I hope that Council can demonstrate the short and long-term actions required to ensure that managing growth and maintaining quality of life is maintained. Thank you for your time and consideration. Sincerely, Destiny Peruchny and Annie Bridlinger. Okay, on to the next. There is another email here, also from Destiny. Hi, Council. I've heard the developer posted on Ucluelet for rent page on Facebook that the apartment building would be subsidized by CMHC grants and have a portion of the units available to below market rents. But this post has since been taken down. From everything I've seen and the comments today, I don't think that is accurate. Can the committee provide further clarification here? And those are all the emails that have come in up till now. I'm just going to refresh my inbox.
All right, so that's all the letters to community input. And you're checking to see if there's any other correspondence to be read?
Nothing has come in since I just checked my inbox.
Okay. Before I call for a second time, there's a question in that last letter about the CMH, I'm going to get it backwards, information having been on the site but then taken down. Is that correct, Mr. Rotenberg?
I think she was referencing a Facebook site.
Oh, okay.
Where it had been put up.
All right. Thanks.
I can comment on that if you'd like.
I will call for a second time. Are there any in-person speakers? Please raise your hands. Destiny? Oh. You'll have to come up and use the mic, darling.
Destiny Peruchny, 1449 Victoria Road. Thank you for reading my letter. I didn't know if I was going to make it till the end, but I stuck it through, as did you, so thank you. But I didn't actually get an answer to that question. I think the developers maybe commented on it, but I was very surprised to hear that it was posted on the for rent page without actual confirmation that it was happening. So I just want to be clear whether or not there is going to be below market housing in the apartment building.
Mr. Gregg, do you know if there's below market? I don't believe there is, but I could be incorrect there.
The proposal does not, what has been put forward to council, does not include any rent restricted housing. So I can't comment on what may have been on Facebook on a fleeting way.
I can comment on that if you'd like.
So to date, that hasn't been part of the proposal that's been brought forward. It would be rental housing in the apartment, but essentially at whatever the market bears.
And while I'm up here, I just have one more clarifying question. So there's a lot of conversation around the 10-meter strip on Marine Drive. And I'm just going to read from what I understand is the restrictive covenant right now. So it's D, registration of a green space covenant on a 10-meter wide strip along the Marine Drive frontage of the subject property to retain vegetation and preclude driveway access along this road corridor as proposed. So how I read that was that the vegetation would be retained, and then when you were showing that, you were showing how it could be cleared right up until that, and that potential patios could go there. So I was just wondering if you could clarify that as well.
I believe that 10-meter green space covenant refers to the R1 zoning and not to the R3, but correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Gregg.
I think you've got it right, that along Marine Drive, the frontage, those are R1 lots that would be created. If you think north of where the Ridge development is, along that, so along the Marine Drive frontage would have a green space covenant they're proposing, which is different than the townhouses, which are internal and don't immediately, directly back onto Marine Drive.
But I guess they are next to the houses along Marine Drive.
Yeah, they
Okay.
back
They're behind
onto
their
Marine Drive, and
backyards.
they have a 10-meter setback between the back of the Marine Drive house lots and where they can build.
Okay. Thank you so much, and thank you for staying so late. I really, really appreciate this.
We had the developer have his hand up there for a little while. Did you want me to check in with him to see?
Oh, yeah, if he's available to answer that,
Okay.
that would be great.
Hello, everyone. Late night. Thank you for everyone for staying on.
Cody, are you there?
Hello, it's me. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Hello? Hello?
We can't hear you, Cody.
Can you hear me now?
I think you're still muted.
It doesn't say he's muted.
No.
Hello?
I love Zoom.
I know. Zoom is my fave.
Mute him and see if something asks to unmute.
Oh, weird.
Can you hear me now?
There you are.
Okay, there you go. Long night. So to comment on the Facebook post, I put a post on yesterday at the Hewlett rental page. I've been looking at it for months and months, seeing all these people that are posting photos themselves and unfortunate stories that they can't find accommodations and living there, et cetera, et cetera. So I posted on there basically, if you're looking for more rentals, you believe in more rentals, I believe supporting our program here would make a lot of sense. We're also looking at going through CMHC for funding to allow us to guarantee market rents or below market rents for portions. So we don't have it finalized, as we don't have this finalized. But once, if this does proceed, we will be looking at that avenue for sure.
I think that answers the question, doesn't it? Thank you so much, Cody, for sticking around. And
no worries. Thank you.
All right. Barb, I think you had your hand up as a second-time speaker.
Barbara Schramm again, 1958 Bay Street. I just have a point of order. How much power council has to adapt approval? Can you put subject tos basically on this approval in response to community feedback? Perhaps saying something of a wish list for a playground internal to the proposal, a buffer space against Marine Drive where one doesn't exist currently. Little modifications like that would automatically reduce the density and address that concern, or at least modify some of that concern. Is that even a possibility, or do you have to take it or leave it?
We do have a certain amount of leeway with the bylaw. As we've done prior, we have the list. Okay, need the late item bit. There is a list of requirements, including things like the apartment building being built first. I don't remember all of them. What page is that on? Page 9?
Or is the question, are we still at the drawing board? Are we still negotiating?
Can you add to that list at this point so that you could get some of the concerns guaranteed, so that once you get this zoning, the DP doesn't come to you and you have no leg to stand on anymore to oppose maximum density and so on?
I think the developer wants to work with us, but I also believe that this is a rezoning, right? We have to really be where it's a rezoning. And it is existing right now, it's zoned as like for zero affordable housing, zero community members. It's all short-term rentals, which we all know that from everything that we want to kind of sway away from, right? So there's probably a little bit of a fine line, but I think the developer wants to work with us, but how far? Well, right?
Okay, I was just curious how much you could request.
I think, like most things, it still has to be, yes, he's a developer, and yes, this is how he makes his money, and for sure, that's still got to be part of it, and with the cost of building these, I think that's why even getting the apartments first, I don't think would have been their first go-to, because that's not the most...
Moneymaker.
Yeah, that wasn't, so I think they've, as far as working together with Mr. Gregg and the team and going back and forth, and I think at some point we have to realize that maybe it is, or they might realize, maybe it's just better for them to build the, whatever, 76 short-term rentals, and now we're compounding our, so, but of course we want to make sure whatever we do is in the best interest of, you know, the maintenance of the quaintness and everything that we've said that is important to us still is. It's just, we're getting to a point where the housing need is, there's got to be a little bit of give and take at some point, and I don't think there's any perfect answer to anything, but we do need to come up with some solutions sooner than later. That's just my 2 cents.
I hear that, and I think the proposal has a lot of good in it, but it seems like the cost is a little high, that they don't have an internal place for all those children to play. It seems pretty basic to me, and it shouldn't be that difficult to just delete a couple of the lots, put in a playground. Increase the setback for the townhouses so that Marine Drive doesn't have that pressure. Just a few little modifications could go a long way and reduce that density a bit. Because this is a massive project. So, okay, thanks.
Are there any other in-person speakers?
Everybody's quiet.
Everybody's quiet.
You'll get a third.
That was provided by John Kubik, so I just wanted to get you to pull it up on screen if it's possible. Uh-oh, John.
We will also call for a third time, too. While you're fiddling with the email, do we have any speakers calling in?
Anyone on the phone, guys?
No.
Anyone on Zoom?
Anyone on Zoom online who's got their hand up?
No.
No? Have we received any more emails to community input? Page refresh. That might be the one you're sending.
Yes, we just received something. Actually, this came in a little bit earlier. It said, can Cody repeat what he said, or can some recap? I did not hear any of his comments. We do broadcast this on YouTube, so you can go back and watch the video online. There's an email that was from Carla Robeson. There's an email from Pat Walton, from Bob and Pat Walton, 457 Marine Drive. We support the need for housing, affordable for working in this town. Please consider the quality of life in this great area. Green space is mandatory. We would like to add our voice to the concern of the density too much for the area of Lot 16. Traffic and parking must be addressed. We are dismayed to find there is no 10-meter buffer to lots on Marine Drive. Green space is the lungs of the community. A large apartment needs adjacent green space for people. Given COVID and advised people to gather outside, space must be provided. Thank you. It says that it's sent from their phone. And then, Destiny, are you forwarding something to me, maybe? Is there something that you wanted to read? Yeah, so I have something here, but if it's something, is this a letter that you sent to John, or what's this?
I said it's a community input, and it says follow up to my question. There's an image attached that I was hoping that you could bring up on screen.
Oh, the image, okay. I can't bring it up from this screen to there, unfortunately.
Sorry, what was it?
It's an image?
Yeah, and I can't do it on demand, I'm sorry. We don't have the same computers here, so.
An
it doesn't
image
quite work.
of, sorry, I didn't catch what you
Yeah,
said.
it was the development with like green around it, showing where this green space covenant would be, and it did continue into the townhouse area. And that was sent to, I guess, neighbors previously. So that's what I've seen, and it was provided by John, and it clarified that. So I think maybe you can attest to what I'm showing there. So that's hence the confusion around that. So I think there's maybe conflicting information.
I can forward the email to council after this for sure.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Thanks, Destiny. And I think that's it. Oh, that is it. That's as of 9:03 p.m. I'm just going to refresh my browser.
We're still
Okay, well, I am going.
We're third round.
I'm going to call for a third and final time. Are there any in-person speakers? Please raise your hands.
Do a little dance.
Any speakers calling in?
No calling in.
And any speakers on Zoom online with their hands raised?
Yes. I have someone by the name of R. Hollingshead. Hello, are you there?
Hello, I am here. My name is Robert Hollingshead. I'm a part-time occupant of 1435 Victoria Road. And yeah, I just want to, I guess, clarify or solidify a few points, I guess, made by council. Is like, this is an opportunity for a little give and take. And I think it's just about that balance on a, a larger overall outlook. It's like, what is the community getting, and what are we giving? I just ask council to, really consider that. You think about the community as it has been in the past, and what are you getting out of this development? Where are you going forwards? Looking at your future OCP, have you, maybe you should wait until that OCP has been declared, rectified, and make judgment based on this proposal, based upon the upcoming OCP. And then just as well, yeah, just I'd like to, I guess, thank council for their time and consideration. and just, yeah, keep in consideration, you know, the green belts and the power that you have here. Once you rezone a property, the property will be rezoned in perpetuity. That's a whole lot of power. That's a big change. You don't have to do this rezoning at this point, and you can make changes. You can request for amendments, and you know, make the community better going forward. So, yeah, thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments, Robert. Any other people online on Zoom with their hands raised?
Not at this time.
And have we received any more emails to community input at ucluelet.ca?
No.
All right, then I am going to say thank you all for your submissions, multiples, or even just your presence and listening.
And for hanging out.
And for hanging out with us. Now is the time for the committee to discuss this proposal and review and come up with anything we want to move on to the next agenda item. Do we need a 5-minute recess?
Yes, please.
Yes,
Am I?
Okay.
Did she say no?
Moved by Councillor Kemps and seconded by Councillor Cole. We will take a 5-minute recess.
I couldn't wait. I already had to run out.
Yeah, no,
But
I know.
I had
You
the
cheated.
emails already. I knew. I already heard.
Can we not just table this for another meeting?
Yeah.
I have not
Oh, we're still muted.
We're good. Oh,
There we go. All right. I am going to call this committee of the whole back to order at 21:14. Oh my gosh. August. And we are at committee discussion. So this is a chance for us to discuss the proposal and what we've heard from the public today. Councillor Cole.
Through the chair, may I make a suggestion that we could perhaps call the committee of the whole, close, go home, digest everything we heard tonight, sleep, eat, and all the things that make our brain work super effectively, and then bring our ideas and thoughts back at our council meeting. And then if Mr. Gregg had some, or Mr. Roenberg had some ideas of things I'm supposed to say to make this happen, to make it where and when we will do this.
You have to make a motion.
I'm making a motion that we bring this back at our next council meeting for our transparent, fulsome dialogue about how we feel about things tonight then.
Second.
Are you sure? Are you sure about that?
Tell us how you really feel.
All right, so the motion is that we bring this back at next week's council meeting.
Add
For
that to
dis-
the
As
agenda.
unfinished business.
Add that to the unfinished business? Is that going to work for Mr. Rotenberg procedurally?
So I just want to clarify, my understanding is the committee's intention right now is that they're not making a recommendation, and instead their plan is to move ahead at the next council meeting and discuss this matter sitting as council rather than a committee of whole, and that's the plan. Is that correct?
I believe that is the plan.
In that case, I think what you can do today is you can adjourn the committee of the whole with the plan for it to be brought back up as a regular council agenda item. It would not be unfinished business. It would just be a regular council meeting item that would be on your agenda under bylaws.
Can you amend what we moved based on what you just said, if you need an amendment?
I think at this point, I do not need a motion. All
Okay.
I need is the clarity that this group right now is planning on adjourning this matter, and then they're not making a recommendation at this time. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All in favor?
If it's not a motion, then it doesn't need to be seconded
never-
or,
oh, we didn't
oh,
have-
except we officially, we did
didn't
put
do
a
the
motion
first
on
one,
the
yeah.
table, didn't
So
we?
now we have to all in favor that.
Then
first
we
one.
do have to, yes. All those in favor of tabling it? And
Yes, Marilyn.
No? Anybody opposed? All right. So we will be adjourning the committee of the whole. We will be bringing this back to council next week. We've just added ourselves another agenda item.
It's going to be a long one next week.
I believe that means we're adjourned.
Maybe
Thanks,
we
you
just
guys, for coming.
diverted the.
Thank you, everyone, for sticking it out.
Yikes. Appreciate it, everyone. Thank you.
Want to be clear-headed.